contracted service. So, you know, maybe that contracted service is increased and comes over here a day a week, and it's more consistent then, you know, from entity to entity or from campus to campus. Not that we don't give great service, I'm not saying that, but it's just something probably should be just discussed and decided.
And again,
it can stay the same as well.
And a lot of it, I think, needs, you know, it depends on what both campuses need for services, and then we should,
Right.
just to do our fiduciary responsibility, thank you,
Right.
that word there. We should, I'm glad I said it before you got recording. You know, we should just see, because if there's like, if it may be cheaper to do it the way we're doing, or it may be quite a bit cheaper and we can get more hours,
Right.
you know, doing it the other way. So that's something I think that we would, you know, Bill definitely rely on, you know, Lori, Matt, and Tammy and you all to have a discussion, so that, you know, just don't say to us, well, what do you want to do? But, you know, here's how it works, and, you know, if we change it this way, it would be more of a cost or less of a cost, or you'll get less service or more service. And I think that would be important for us.
Yeah, or consistency between the two
Right.
campuses, that's another, you know,
But
equity.
especially while we're still in this, you know, the first year of kind of things staying the same while we work on a focus and stuff too. I mean, that, it's something that just because we do it 1 year doesn't mean that's how we have to do it forever, unless we enter into contracts.
But we do
Right.
need a budget for this year, so,
Right.
you know, it'd be nice to know, you know, what the costs are for all of these programs and how they're operated right now. I mean, you did a pretty good overview, but I think in general, if we can figure out what the costs are for each one and what the pros and cons are, we can probably make a pretty quick decision.
Yeah, good. So basically, you know, and then Tammy, Matt, and I are gonna get a date on the schedule for a couple, you know, a week or two to review the system, because actually the new system is up and running for budgeting for River Valley, so that's very exciting. I was working in it today, as a matter of fact, so.
Got any money in it?
There's no money. There's no money in it. However, there are account codes to apply budgets to, so that's, and so I want Matt and Tammy to become familiar with the system, so I'm gonna be training them in the next couple of weeks as well to get in and be able to look around, so. But we're gonna use the system, so your budgets will look a little bit different, because they're not always, they'll probably export to some sort of spreadsheet, but they're gonna be, the account codes are gonna look different too. Anyway. So that's the real overview, and then I plan to bring, I do have, I know I passed these out at the,
The timeline?
you already have yours, yeah.
Yep.
Does everybody have one of these, or? It's been updated, I think, maybe since the last time, but.
If you haven't, that's it.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we do plan to bring a draft, thank you, for the board to review.
She said it has changed, but just take a look and see.
On the 19th of November. And then shortly after that is when all of the information will start coming from the state.
Oh, wait. Lori, I'm sorry. So you're aware that we're still, you know, we're gonna vote, we have to vote by ballot, and it's gonna be on town meeting days, and Andy's working on that with Jackie in Wardsboro.
I'll be
Okay.
your fill in the blank guy.
Yeah, thank you. He finishes my sentences for me. It's a Leland grade thing, we got better grades that way. But, so we're looking at that vote date, and if that's the case, I think we have a little bit more time. And I don't know if you accounted for that in this updated one. So
I just,
basically, we have to have it to the printers by the middle of January,
yes,
is what it looks like for.
right, so I allowed for 3 drafts. Maybe you won't need that, so.
Maybe we will.
Maybe you will.
Maybe
know,
we'll need an
it's-
extra meeting for a first draft.
You
Just
might.
don't know until it starts.
So I thought I'll bring the first draft. My plan is to bring the first draft on the 19th, and then we can look at it from there and adjust, I think.
Okay.
Maybe you know, so everybody's comfortable with it and we don't see a lot of changes, we can move a meeting. Because we won't get the information from the AOE until December. You can see it's,
Right. Well, some stuff doesn't come out till January either.
right, that's true. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the equalized pupil, that's, you know, obviously one of the biggest cost drivers, so that comes, supposed to come out in mid-December. So, And so the first draft will only be the expense side of the budget, and then we'll start to add the revenue side of the budget. And I know we like to, look at the tax rate. And,
I like to play with them.
I know, that's why you want to know, you want that 3-year comparison to look at, yeah.
Yeah, now,
So that'll be great.
we won't be required to do that this year, because there'll be no previous comparisons, right?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I don't think so. I think that you'll just have that 1 year. I mean, you'll still publish one in each of your town reports.
Right.
Because that also has the CLA
Yeah.
percentage. But you're right, I don't believe that there'll be a comparison for the other years.
And then on the Wyndham Central budget, and I know we've talked about this, and I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and I didn't remember the answer. So are we gonna see, is Wardsboro gonna have a Wyndham Central allotment, and is Dover gonna have one?
No.
Or is it, so it's just gonna be River Valleys and okay.
Yes, so where that is where that is affected the most is in the agency fund budget.
Right.
The superintendent's budget, it's small enough that it's, I'll probably have the comparison year over year for that, but when you get into the agency fund and you've got new hires and that type of thing, it makes it, more complicated. So, in the agency fund, you'll have West River, River Valleys, Marlboro, Stratton, and Wyndham. Those are the entities.
So like, let's just say,
I thought I missed somebody.
so let's say like with band, instrumental music. So right now Dover does like 1 day, and we all agreed to pay that little extra percentage, or we don't do quite a full day, but
Right.
so we could have it full time, and Wardsboro has some portion of that too, and I don't know what that is. So will we, because you have to count for it by buildings, or is the agency fund gonna have West River and list all the individual school buildings, or is it gonna just be West River, and for instrumental music, it's one number?
Unless you direct me otherwise from the WCSU board, then I was planning on doing just the one number, and, that'll be both FTEs, that'll just be
And
added
then-
together.
So then it will be up to the administrators in the buildings to make sure that their building is covered for what they need. Okay. Because everybody knows how agency fund works, right?
Yes.
You? So in Wyndham Central, there's certain things that, because we're smaller schools, that we can't afford a full-time person at. So we started about 30 years ago, Frank Rucker's idea, and when we talked about this in other places, they looked at us like we have several heads. So we said, hey, to have a really good instrumental music teacher, for Dover to find one for 1 day a week, and Wardsboro half a day a week, and Newfane for a day and a half a week, instead of doing that, let's hire them through Wyndham Central, and then Wyndham Central gives them a full-time job, and then they say, if there was 5 schools and each had 1 day a week, you pay 20%, and they're the superintendent was their supervisor, was their, who they worked for, and then he assigned them to each school. And that worked out really well. So there was librarians, there's been school nurses hired under that, there's been, the instrumental music teacher, some people do vocal music, all different positions. So what they would do is at the time we adopted the budget, there would be an agency fee budget, because if Dover doesn't, and say West River, River Valleys doesn't use instrumental music, because we have so many students, we do a full-time person, we don't have to pay for it. It's only those schools that use it. And about 20 years ago, when I was chairman the first time in WCSU, we moved the vote date on that till after town meeting, because some schools were concerned if their budget got reduced, and we already agreed to the agency fund, that was something that you couldn't adjust. So we get it, we go over it and we review it, but we don't approve it actually till after town meeting. So that will be another thing then that will be combined, because I'm not sure what. So we probably ought to be told, or just show us what Wardsboro uses for agency and what Dover does, so that we see, and if there's maybe a position that Dover doesn't use agency fund, or Wardsboro doesn't use agents, and then maybe we have a person that can cover that, and if we're gonna have that person contracted through one or the other, to
Okay.
bring that in. And I don't know if there is
Can look at
even
that.
any position, I'm not sure.
Well, I was thinking in terms of, for River Valleys, by adding the two FTEs together, and that's River Valley's FTE, it also creates some flexibility, right? So, you know,
But if you have to report on it by district, how tight does that have to be?
so the,
Or building, I mean, I'm sorry.
right, so we will have to do that at some point. The agency, if something isn't broken out, they're pretty strict about breaking out like teacher salaries and that type of thing by building, but if there is some type of service, they just break it out by ADM.
Okay,
So
excellent.
So-
that's how they handle it internally in the agency.
When we build it as a, for example, a technology service,
Mhm.
we can build it out as a program cost rather than an individual cost.
Okay.
Right.
And everybody here on the board is aware that, you know, the state wanted us to all go into these bigger groups because it would be better, a better opportunity and better accounting and stuff. But then they're still making our business manager report by building.
Right.
So we can't just have a budget number, say that the River Valleys is, you know, $2 and $1 of it is in Wardsboro and $1 of it's in Dover. They want to know how much was in each building spent. So
Yeah.
again, it's almost like, why?
Yeah, and like I said, they're
Well,
pretty
it just
strict
adds
on
another layer.
Yeah.
Is really what it
It's
does.
how, it's because of how they have to report it to the feds,
Feds.
and which gives us the state of Vermont money. So that's what we've been told anyway. There's been a lot of angry business managers that have gone, have combined all their budgets and now are having to break them apart. So I haven't had to do that, so that's
Yeah.
nice. I've been able to build it the way they're asking for it right now. But the way we present the budget could be River Valley's, right? So it doesn't need to be presented as Wardsboro's section and Dover's section. It should be, I would think, presented as River Valley's budget.
And then
so
you'll just
all
break it
the-
out the stat report time.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
just really
Yeah.
for the.
I thought they were making you report it to them in the beginning individually too.
No.
No, it's in the back office.
Right, it's the
Oh.
back office stuff.
Yeah.
And it does need to be broken out for the back office.
But it's a lot easier for you that way than trying to just break it out at the end of the year when you've got real numbers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so.
No, the budget you guys should have should be River Valley.
Right. Well, that's what,
So with your
I agree
direction,
with
that's
that.
how I'll bring the first draft. You will see a line for direct instruction teachers. That will be River Valley's teachers, okay? And that will be their, River Valley's benefits and that type of thing. So
okay.
if that is,
Yeah. Our town report has actually always broken it down in the town report, which I'm sure you probably had a hand in. You know what I mean? They've broken it down. Actually, you can find teachers' salaries in our town report.
yes,
So is that the same with you guys?
Well, what we do is we actually post everybody's earnings for the previous year.
Okay.
So we have one big line item for, you know, like educational staff,
Yes.
and it's $350,000. So you gotta look further in the book and you can see that teacher A made 62,000, teacher B.
It's all in there. It's just
Right.
a matter of when you present it on the budget, it's just one line.
right.
So my only question, again, not to prolong this, and I want to try to get you out of here. I'm sure there's going to be a question asked, well, how many teachers does this equal in each building?
Oh, yeah.
So we'll have to make some kind
Oh,
of cheat
that'll be
sheet,
okay.
just so,
Yeah. We can have staffing
Right.
yeah.
sheet.
Yeah, yeah, with all the budgets that I present in Wardsboro's last year, I have a column for FTEs,
Right,
so.
okay,
But
perfect.
we can have FTEs at Wardsboro and FTEs
I
at
think
Dover.
people will ask, definitely, I mean, I just.
Well, it's always good to know what that number represents, how many FTEs that represents.
Well, I don't mind that, but, so again, that's what we do in Dover, we have, you know, like, it's 6.25 FTE.
Mhm.
But I think if River Valley's, if you say elementary instructional, and it's 12 FTE, people are gonna wanna know what FTEs are in which building.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's, I can note that.
Right, is that good with you?
Yeah,
mean,
I think that's good.
What do you guys out there
It's-
think?
The more information, the better.
No? Just checking. Cool. What else, Lori?
That's really about it. I think if there are any other items that come up in meetings, Oh, reserve budgets, yeah, we should talk
Well, I
about.
have that, that's a whole separate line, and so I figured we'll do the operational first.
I have a quick question too. if you
Yeah.
can. Are we doing special ed services the same way in both buildings? Are we providing them at the same, out of your office?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
So
changed a
everything's-
few years.
Okay, yeah, because I know you
Yeah.
guys used to employ someone, and then at one time we did
Yeah.
too, so
Right.
that's all being done through you.
Yes.
Right,
So
so
that's
that would be
actually-
a single line item,
Right.
almost like a purchase service, not really, but an assessment
Okay.
from Wyndham Central to River Valleys.
Bless you.
And I think that's gonna be kinda nice, because then you won't see which is in each building, because that'll be at the stat report time, so that's way out there.
Right.
So that kinda does more what like Marlboro had been asking for, where if you have it by individual building, and a new child moves in and all of a sudden your budget goes up a lot, it's easy to say. I think it provides a little bit more anonymity for,
It does.
so that's really good.
I got one more for you, Lori.
Sure.
In a minute. So we're gonna show no comparables to last year. We're not gonna put the two numbers together if it's the same account number. So there's gonna be no point of reference for people when they're looking at this. I can see that being a little
Can
bit of
I
a
answer
bone of
that one?
contention.
So Lori was gonna try to do that, and I told her she was crazy. Because why go through the work? Because if somebody really wants to know, you can get last year's town report and see what the budget was. I mean, it's, because that number doesn't exist. She now has to.
I know it's
to
not
meld
comparable.
it, and then not only for us, but then she's gotta do 6 schools for 5 schools for the West River. So I felt that if somebody really was that interested to know what was spent last year, we can have the Dover report and the Wardsboro report.
I'm a little
Or-
nervous with a first year, one vote.
Okay, so
One
then,
shot.
if we do that, then that's something I think the board should do. I don't think we should burden Lori with that. And I think that's something we should be able to do by
That's
just
fine.
taking our
I mean,
town
we can
reports.
just marry up the account numbers.
Right. So we
Yeah, I
can
think
work
it's-
on that.
And it's not gonna be
And
apples to apples,
I
because
think
things are
it's
spent differently in
also-
each building. I get that. you know what I
Right,
mean?
and that's
But-
part of the problem, and the other, the other is that it's really that you're building something new,
Mhm.
and so to keep always comparing to a back.
I understand, I'm
back
just
data.
nervous about the first vote. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
yay or a nay
And
vote.
that's a
people,
very
you know what I mean?
important point, yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
I think if it was, in the future, and if we had
It-
something
how
to, if
hard
we
was-
had some time to explain it to people, I think this is gonna be a very confusing year with the fact that we're changing how we vote, when we vote, and
Where we vote.
and where we vote. And then you're gonna have no comparison to year prior, and just,
We
So-
will on the tax rate.
We will.
You will.
on the
For
tax
tax
rates,
rates.
we will, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really
you will on the
bottom line.
tax rate,
Well,
and you
not
will
really,
be able to
not
look
really,
at
no.
your, it will be one budget, so,
Mhm.
it'll be your combined, so you could take the totals of your 2 budgets, and,
Yeah.
are we up or down?
And I'm just
you know
thinking
what
maybe by section, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like just the
Just like,
instructional, like we always had the elementary instructional, special ed,
I don't think a line item
transportation.
by line item is necessary, but I think
The
maybe
block.
a big chunk, that's.
How hard would that be for you to do? Would you totally hate us and never talk to us again?
Maybe.
I would hate it if West River asked the same
Oh,
thing.
they will ask, yes.
Okay, so we'll, let me look at that with
Yeah, we can
Rick
table that and figure
on,
out.
on one of our, when we set up the agenda meeting. And maybe Rick and I can do that pretty easy, because I have the budget in a spreadsheet, and if I can just add your stuff
I think
into
this
it.
stuff is there too, and just like you
Yeah.
said, I mean, there's only like 10 sections when it comes
Right.
right down to it, do you know what I mean?
And it,
Just looking for the big number.
so that you have it behind the scenes, it's not something you're
Well,
going to
and-
present necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's something we want to present.
Something, just because that's all people have this year. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? They don't have a meeting to go to ask these questions, They're just gonna have what is in front of them. And I mean, we know that very few people show up for the informational meetings. I think we'll get much better attendance than we have in the past, but I just don't think people are gonna have a moment to sit down and kind of chew it, chew through the budget.
I don't see it in the budget, like now you show,
Published.
here's this proposed, and here's last year's proposed, and here's 2 years ago actuals. I think we just have a separate page in the book, so they would have to, if that's, let's
That's
see what
kinda
it
what I'm
looks like.
thinking, yeah.
So, okay, well, wow, West River Valleys has 200,000 in instructional. That seems like a lot of money. And then you go back and see previous year, this year current budget, it was proposed, 120 in Dover and 80 in Wardsboro, so it's the same exact number, so I guess it really didn't make that much of, and then that, they'll have to work a little bit for
Yeah,
it, but.
on a high level, they'll know.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll work with you on that because the other issue is that the account code structure has changed completely.
Okay, so
Right, so
what-
it's not just your old account codes that you just kind of mesh together, it's.
Okay, so maybe, could you do us a favor then for our next meeting? Ship us, or email it to us, to the board, or have Bill email to the board, or Matt, whoever. But can you just email what the format of the new budget's gonna look
Sure,
like?
yep.
And then
Actually, I
let
have
us.
it right now.
Yes,
It
just-
doesn't have any numbers in it, but.
No, that's fine, without numbers, but then that way we can look at it, and then if we have any questions, and if we can take that off your plate.
You should print it.
Send it to Tammy.
Do you want me to print it?
Print it?
You don't have to do it right now, I mean, if you email it to us at home, I mean, we're not gonna work on it tonight anyway.
And printing it does no good. We'll just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Lose it.
We'll just want to have it digitally anyway.
Okay.
We'll roll it, wrap it up and
Send it
throw
to
it.
me, I'll.
I'm gonna forward it to Bill right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be excellent.
Send it out when he's on the other things.
Lori, do you have anything else under operational?
Not under operational.
Okay, does anybody on the board have any other questions for Lori about
I just
operational?
have one question. Lord, I'm Carrie from McDonald Katie. So when you were identifying, I think 3 areas that between Dover and Wardsboro, we do things a little bit differently in the budget. And one of those, the example was the food preparation.
Mhm.
Will you distinguish between the cost also? It sounded like you were going to do that.
Right.
But so that when we're comparing what makes sense, we'll have kind of numbers.
Yes.
Where there are numbers to distinguish between the two?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's for next meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And on the other side for Bill, for Tammy and Matt too, maybe, I mean, it may not be doable to do it any other way, but if they think it may be, maybe we even should, if we could in the next month or 6 weeks, do a trial, couple days or something.
Yeah, probably what I'll do is I'll ask Lori to give us the financial side, and I'll ask Tammy and Matt to give us the programmatic side.
Okay.
What does the food service look like
Great.
programmatically? What does it look like financially? And then we can further that
For
conversation.
those areas where we're comparing.
Yeah, the food program, after-school program, and technology service.
Okay.
Well, we had 6 things altogether.
Transportation.
You
Transportation
had
was the
food,
other thing.
transportation,
Yeah,
21C,
transportation, better talk about that.
Yeah.
technology, oh, I'm sorry, and then you had review systems and then expenses.
Yeah.
School programming.
Agency fund.
Yeah.
You guys,
That's helpful.
you
Yes,
good?
that's helpful.
You guys good?
Yeah.
Anybody out there? Okay, you pass step 1.
Step 1.
That's
Check.
Okay, step 2, special items in the budget. I threw this out there because I wasn't sure, like, Dover does a payment and it's under transportation to the mover. Yeah, and I think what we need to do is just flush any of those out so that everybody, from Dover's side, here are the kind of different things that sometimes we'll do. And from the Wardsboro side, like maybe, and again, I'll make something up, but maybe they make a donation to the Turnip Gods every year to have bigger turnips for the festival. Whatever there is, we just should get those out there too, so we
Who would
we
be the
all
best
know.
point person for each campus to
Well, I would think
identify
the
those?
administrators, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's probably like we have Keewaydin, Four Winds is in there. There's very few, but there are a couple.
But you would have the
Yeah.
knowledge to
Yeah.
look at your current
Yeah,
budget, maybe
easily.
identify those
There's
6 or
probably like
7
4 or
things,
5
and then
things.
have Matt do that.
Well, and I was even thinking things like, in Dover for the field trip became such an issue 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, so that we've limited field trips because we had one teacher that was taking a field trip every other week and other teachers that took one a year, but yet, the money, how did you determine whether it was, makes sense? And I don't know if there's other things like that we're quite different on, that we should try to just, get to common ground, I think, just so that, we're closer. And I know everything isn't gonna be exactly the same, that each child's gonna get $1 for a field trip, but, we don't wanna be spending $500 per child on field trips in Wardsboro and $100 in Dover, because somebody's gonna say, hey, what's going on here, or vice versa.
Okay.
I'll do that.
All right.
So we're okay, and that was just my special items in the budget,
Okay.
and then the last, Anybody else on that topic? We good with that?
No, I think that's a good idea to flush them out, though.
Yeah, just so we know, I mean, we may wanna keep things or, well, IB is a special cost that is only on one side, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really smart.
And then the last thing is the reserve budgets. So in Dover, we have several because several years ago, we got nervous, when the state started wanting to look at how much you had in reserves, and there was actually talk about limiting how much a building could keep in reserves or a program. So I think we have a building reserve, capital building, capital vehicle, capital equipment, and I think we have something like equipment in the building too. Capital equipment was like the tractor and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's 2 different levels of equipment.
I'm about
Right.
to find all that out tomorrow
Yeah.
from Marco.
Yeah, so
He's gonna
we
tell
did
me all
that
of that.
purposely, but I don't know if we have to do that anymore either. And we used to actually do, I used to do a spreadsheet, like the buses were good for 10 years. So, if we put $10,000 away, in 5 years we could buy a bus and, and with the trade-in and try to figure the cost and,
Capital.
yeah, and on the building, we just were putting money away because we didn't really, we said we're not gonna just replace a furnace because it's 10 years old. And then we've also had arguments over how long, the true original Chinese capital reserve was 10 years and it was always supposed to come out at 0. And, when we started trying to do that, especially on the town side with like a $900,000 ladder truck, it just didn't work because it would cause spikes and we were trying to do a level tax rate. So, and I don't think Wardsboro has any reserve. I mean, you have money in a reserve account, but you don't have a plan on how we're spending it, right?
No, I don't believe so. Right, we just have money in it. There's
And
one
then if you
reserve
need
account.
it, and, yeah.
Need to be spent.
There
Oh,
was
I
a
know, the
capital
fourth
plan,
reserve
though.
bill was just a reserve, because that's the money we used to borrow to
And then
buy down the tax rates.
And you had then you
That was the
combine that
fourth
with a warning
Right.
that anything excess would go into that because
Right.
they allowed the draft.
And then allows us to use it that year instead of having it sit in limbo for a year.
Which is what Wardsboro set up last year.
Right.
Right, they did use the money for their roof, for the,
Right.
out of that.
So one of the things Dwight's
Right.
gonna speak, I'm gonna put Dwight on the spot and see if he did his homework this morning, is to, come up with how we want the building reserve to look, because we had the study done.
Right.
And that was telling us how much we should have, and I think it's good every year to just get people used to putting money into that. And then if we wanna do it for vehicles, if we're gonna keep the busing and not try to have West River do all our transportation, West River Transport. And then, do we wanna keep a reserve budget for equipment if we had to, and, how we wanna do that. So, how do we wanna do that? Do we wanna, because if we're gonna put any funding in it, that should be discussed at the verbal meeting, the annual meeting for the
Annual meeting.
district. And if we're gonna fund it, that would have to be a question on the ballot.
To fund the reserve fund,
If you wanna fund the reserve fund with new money.
Right.
but we can budget for it though.
Right, so if we all assume that let's say each building's gonna have 500,000 in reserves on July 1st or June 30th, then we can put that, just say that all the money goes into the reserve fund for the first year, and then we'll make a recommendation the following year, how it gets spent.
So you're talking about basically collapsing Dover, because Wardsboro only has one reserve fund. So are you talking about collapsing Dover's reserve
I
funds
think we have to have
and
that discussion.
combining them? Okay, yeah.
Well, I don't know, how do we wanna do that? So I think now that it's just not me doing Dovers, and it's not just them doing Wardsboros, we gotta do something that everybody's happy with.
What was the reason you did that? You wanted to have smaller accounts, or just better
Yeah,
way of
smaller
counting?
accounts in case the state ever said, hey, you've got, there was a time when the state was looking at how much, because there was one district up north, the guy that did one of our studies, his district had like $17 million in reserves. He
Right.
could build buildings, and what it was is, if you think about what Act 68 was all about, that wasn't really his money, that was all our monies.
Right.
So the state was looking at saying, hey, we're only gonna allow you to have $100 per pupil in reserves.
Mhm.
But reserves have been valuable to us and to you guys, like, you know, if we have unexpected special expenses, we've got the money to borrow from. Some districts go out on the open market and borrow it 5 or 8 or 10%, which is just
Not that
crazy.
high.
It allows us to stabilize our tax rate too.
Yeah.
Plus
Right.
the stabilized tax rate, yeah.
Right.
It's fairly stable
So,
if you have enough.
so we had just the one fund that was just a general fund. Then we had the one that was specific to buildings,
Right.
and then we had the one specific to transportation, and one specific to equipment like the smart boards and stuff.
Right.
And what we have in Dover, you actually are not required to get voter approval to spend money in reserve funds. Because when they put it in a reserve, if there's a specific reserve fund,
Right.
we have always in Dover, because we've always told the voters, we're not gonna spend your money without letting you know. And letting you have a say. But technically, the town doesn't get approval to spend money out of the reserve fund for the vehicle reserve of the building. They just have a vote to fund it,
Right.
to put money into it. And what we've done in Dover is we just, to make it effective July 1st, we say any surplus, if there is a surplus, it automatically goes into the general reserve, and then we can reassign it the following year. And then our articles actually say to put 20,000 into the vehicle reserve fund with the money coming from the reserve fund. Or, and then because we don't vote income, we only vote expenditures at meetings, we also, at the end of May, when we're required to submit our report to the state, we look at where, because again, in March and April, the legislators haven't voted yet, so we don't know what they're doing, so we don't know how much they're funding, how much, and it's not a per pupil, but it's that block grant, but it's based on your number of pupils. So
Yeah.
we don't know what all our numbers are gonna look like. So we wait to vote, and we get permission to move up to X number of dollars out of the reserve fund into the operational budget to offset the tax rate, and the voters actually give us a tax rate to shoot for, which is, we say to them, and it's usually been no more than a third, because we just also didn't want to have the whole reserve gone in 1 year.
Right.
So those are the kind of articles I think we can talk about. Yeah,
So
because
there's
it's,
no more than a third of what the actual.
well, that's
A
the,
dollar.
we give them a dollar amount, but we
Up to
make it,
no more than
we try to set it.
$220,000.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so you're setting it based on a percentage, but
Exactly.
what you're presenting to the voters is
Is
a
an
dollar.
exact
And,
number.
and there's been years where like we've said 220 and we needed all 220, and then there's years where we said like 350, but at the end of the year, we only really needed 100.
Right.
And 150 came back in anyways
Then it
because,
goes
Mhm.
back.
when they
It
did the
flowed
stat
through from
report.
the end of the
Exactly.
year end.
Yeah.
Right, so it was really nothing. And then the other thing is sometimes you run into cash flow issues, because your tuition came due earlier than the state's money came in. So there's not enough cash to pay all the bills, so we can just borrow from the reserve with just, I forget what they call it in accounting, it's
Oh, it's a transfer.
journal entry or
Journal
something.
entry.
Yeah, and then we just sign
Well,
something.
you have to actually move the cash, so.
Yeah, well, you move the cash, but it's just done, for us, it's just, we sign a piece of paper that gives the treasurer permission to move that money. So maybe what we ought to do is we'll do a lesson on our reserve, how our reserves have worked, and then we'll do like maybe 20 minutes, 15 at another meeting.
If we
And
can just do
so-
definitions of what's in
Right.
each, how much flows into each,
Yeah.
and
Right,
that
so,
sort of thing.
so currently from the state standpoint,
Helpful.
and I've talked to Wardsboro about this before, they don't wanna see a lot of money sitting in your general fund, right, in your operating fund. And Wardsboro actually has quite a bit of money sitting in their operational fund again this year. So, they're gonna be looking to move that out. I have not heard, in the 3 years that I've been doing this, any type of stipulations around the reserve funds or limitations around the reserve funds. Doesn't mean that it's not coming or they're not
It's been
looking
there.
at that. Yeah, but I haven't heard anything about that. But I do think it's a really good idea, a very prudent idea to move the money at the end of the year, like Dover does, into, have that on the ballot, that any surplus is
Automatically.
automatically moved into a reserve fund. And then I think that, I could work with you, Dwight, as far as just laying out maybe 5 years even. You have the capital plan, what do we want to move into the reserve funds
Right.
to
Do you budget each year for the reserve, or do you?
Yeah.
You do, in addition, and then in
There's
addition,
an
surplus?
article that says, and it depends how we're doing, so, remember, we're looking for a consistent tax rate.
Right.
So if all of our expenses went way down, we'll fund the reserve fund with tax money.
Right.
So that we're, even though we could have reduced the taxes maybe 10 cents,
Yeah.
our voters would much rather, because probably the following year we'll have to increase it.
Yeah.
So we didn't want this, so that's what we'll like, so if this year we're saving money, we'll fund the reserves with tax dollars. If next year it looks like we're gonna be a little higher, then what we'll do is we'll fund the reserve, the different reserves out of the general reserve.
Okay.
And we'll even, we've done articles, like we did a playground addition to the playground one time, and we said, you know, we asked for $20,000 to spend on the playground with the money coming out of the general reserve fund.
Okay.
So it didn't raise the tax rate.
Yeah, so they have a much more active
Right.
reserve fund
I can see
program
that. I can see
than
that.
any of the schools
Mhm.
have had, really, that,
But it's definitely saved our backsides of quite a few.
Right, and we use it this year in Wardsboro.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah. What was interesting is that when we worked with your tax rate in whatever day, whatever it was, the end of the year, and then the governor came in and used that one-time money, it even lowered the tax rate even more. So-
But he did
and
that
happened-
after.
He did it after.
After we're required
yeah,
to submit.
Yes,
That's why we always wait till almost the last day.
yeah,
Frank never liked this.
And you should do that, though. I mean, because you don't, never know what the
Right.
rate's gonna be set at, and this
Right.
rate's already set after you've already passed your budget, so
Right.
you need to
Right.
it needs to remain fluid.
And it makes it difficult on the other, I went to Wilmington one time and talked to them about doing the same kind of thing, and they just said our voters don't have that kind of trust and faith, and so we, you know, I mean, it's something I think we should try to keep building, and it seems like your voters have a lot of trust on the Wardsboro side. If we can keep, you know, we have the trust on the Dover side, it's definitely, you know, if we all of a sudden had 25 new students move in because we have the greatest program in all of Vermont, you know, but they all move in, you know, December 1st, we're gonna be a year and a half
Yeah,
before we see the
exactly.
money.
you
Yeah.
don't, you won't get the funding for it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They come after that.
Okay, so on the reserves then, we'll work on, we'll have that on the next meeting, we'll bring Dover's reserve stuff. And then you don't have to worry about that probably till after we'll see how the rest of the budget kind of trickles out. and then-
Right, yeah.
And also what we're gonna do with transportation will make a big difference.
Mhm.
Oh, you know, we also have those other funds, because we put that money away for the fiber. We still have that money in account, we still have the Dover
Green
special,
Mountain.
yeah. Or the Kingswood
Kingswood.
money. I don't think we spent all that yet.
Haven't spent any of it.
What's the Kingswood money?
Kingswood gave us money for an Act 250 permit. We're one of the only schools in the state that actually weigh in on Act 250, other than saying, yep, it's fine, just go ahead and bill it. And then, yeah, there's there's a Buzzy money too there from the select board, I think is still floating around, isn't that?
I think the Buzzy money is the.
Oh, it's a fiber.
Is the fiber
Right.
money,
Because now that all will come back to, that'll all come into the new district on the 1st of July.
yeah. Yes.
Right.
You guys really are set up extremely well.
Yeah, and I'll be getting more direction from the state as far, you know, from the agency as far as how these, you know, will dissolve these reserve funds and create new reserve funds. And you know, I'll be getting the direction.
So you still don't have that direction, though, that's.
Not really, I mean, we can set up as many funds as we want, but we want to be really thoughtful about it. And, you know, I personally, from a management standpoint, love the idea of, you know, there's money for a bus in this fund and, you know, that type of thing, instead of lumping it all together. So, you know, because it means you've been thoughtful and you're planning and that there's a plan in place for the capital needs and that type of thing, so
Yeah, having that data from the capital.
Right.
that'll be
Huge.
critical, yeah.
Yeah.
So come July 1, will Wardsboro, Dover, Reserve just go into one? You said that you don't have instructions right now or directions, they'll just come into one pot,
Right,
It'll
so
be
that's,
River Valleys.
River Valleys?
it'll be River Valleys, but whether or not we set up just a number of
Right.
funds in River Valleys and then the money kind of goes,
Because I would think at the meeting, and I almost think we could vote on it at the River Valleys meeting, is we could set up, if we decide we want to set up a building fund and a vehicle fund and an equipment fund, we can say, you know, on July 1st, you know, the first 20,000 goes into equipment, 30,000 into vehicles, and 50 into buildings.
Yeah.
And the balance stays there, and then once we know what the real numbers are, the following year, we can make recommendations.
But doesn't that pigeonhole us a little bit if it's not?
Doesn't that-
It pigeonhole us into what it can be spent on, you know, if it's
No,
not
because we
necessary?
can get the voters to move it somewhere else. And that's
Well,
why,
that's
your big number's still in your general
Okay,
reserve.
Yeah.
just more, okay.
She
Okay.
could
If it's
just
a $100,000 bus
Just
and you
small.
wanna replace after 5 years,
Right.
the board has decided, we're gonna put 20,000 in every year.
Okay.
So that you know that you got it.
And
Okay.
if we have our own buses, we know they're gonna have to be replaced.
Right,
Right.
right.
If we know the buildings are gonna need work, if nothing else, they're gonna need roofs every 20 years in this environment, or 30. We know water systems are gonna go to head.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Okay.
So, yeah, that does pigeonhole you on that, but it's also, I would feel a lot more comfortable because it doesn't look like we're just hoarding money. It looks like Lori said, I like that. We're
Yeah.
being thoughtful and
And there's
looking out
plans.
for
And
the
there's a
state.
purpose for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Form a plan.
Because
Exactly. That's what the voters wanna see.
Exactly.
just
They
don't
wanna see purpose in the
a big
spending.
Yeah.
count, I mean, wanna see
Well,
that
we
it's-
had $1.2 million one time, and you know, I was waiting at town meeting for somebody to say, holy mackerel, we could cut our tax rate in half, you know, and well, you really can't.
For a year.
because-
Right.
Yeah, and you're gonna be at
For
that
a year.
dollar, you're gonna go down to $1.10, it doesn't matter how much you move over.
Right.
Or, you know, that base amount, you can't get under
You can't get
that.
under that, exactly.
Right.
So Rich, would you anticipate then having articles for this River
What-
Valleys?
Yes,
About
maybe.
setting up these potential different reserve funds for
Right,
these expenses?
but I think, well, I mean, that would be a decision of the board.
Yes.
And I think we'll just have to make sure that where we would vote on that,
Mhm.
do we vote on that at the River Valleys meeting, or does that have to be separate articles? Does that have to be separate ballot votes?
At
Because
town
our
meeting.
first budget has to
Town
be
meeting.
approved at town meeting by ballot. But I don't know if that would include the reserve fund, so that may be a question we have to ask the
The
attorney.
attorney, I think so too,
You know, could we set up the reserve funds and,
because it's ballot, yeah.
right, but but then the first question is, do we wanna do that? Or do we wanna just move it all into a general reserve fund and just be whatever's there, and then we deal with it the following
We
year?
have to do that, yeah, right.
But I would feel much more comfortable seeing it, just some of it separated out, just in case. Because,
Right.
you know, remember, the governor spent one-time money this year.
Yeah.
So for him to give us all our 8 cents, all these school districts that combined, plus fund everything, plus any increases, and last year there wasn't much, but this year health insurance is projected to increase a lot more than last year. You know, there's gonna be another big fight.
It's all gotta come from somewhere in the end.
Right.
Is really what it
Right,
comes
and we
down
also
to.
have to look at
Okay.
cash flow as well, so, you know, you have to do business on 7/1, right? And
Yeah.
so, but you also have to run out your business in your old entities.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of money that we're going to, I mean, we either take that from reserve and put it into the general fund to carry through.
As a loan.
As a loan, or you go out for a tax anticipation note for that first, you know, couple of months. And
Which
then
is
it
gonna
goes-
pay interest, which is gonna cost them more. So if we can fund that ourselves.
Right, right, so you know, depending on, you know, Wardsboro's audit, they're starting on that Monday, so we should in a few weeks have a good solid number. And then I know Dover's probably been going through their audit right now, so we'll have some good solid numbers. And we'll say, okay, what do we need for cash flow? So that money's gotta go into the general fund to float, right?
Okay.
And then the balance of it will go into either a general reserve or into several reserves. So that's the other piece of this. We have to remember the cash flow.
And you can always borrow, even though it's specific to vehicles. Let's say we needed to borrow 300,000, there's only 200 in the general reserve, and there's 100 in the vehicle reserve. We can borrow from the vehicle reserve too. We just have to eventually either put it back or get permission from the voters not to put it back.
Right.
So,
So I'll be looking at all of that as we move forward, and then maybe Dwight, you and I can look at
Sure.
the capital needs.
no, he's all done with that. He's got it right now.
Yeah,
Let's get it all
well, we
done.
should definitely take a deeper look into it. but-
Wow.
Well, you know, I have general numbers, but I think, you know, if,
No,
I,
that-
we should be able to
no,
break.
I think we
should
should-
break
we
it down
should-
too.
yeah.
Based on the report, we can break it down into different categories, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we ought to just look at like where ours, what we had in ours too, because that should, if we decide to do that, that should transfer over.
Right, and Marco will be able to help me understand from Dover's standpoint. Wardsboro has never been in a cash flow crunch because you've had a pretty substantial balance in your general fund, right? So the first couple of
Don't jinx
months.
us.
Yeah, the first couple of months of the fiscal year are fine for Wardsboro, but I'm not sure what Dover does. Does Marco move money into the general fund to cover, you know, you've got your summer payrolls and that type of thing. So I'll find all that out tomorrow. So that's the piece I
Depends
don't
on the
really
year.
understand yet, but I will.
Okay, I think we beat up the business manager. We
Yeah.
got to
That was
Didn't
right.
beat me up, you were very.
25 minutes more than we wanted to.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem,
Hope you feel better.
thanks.
So we're gonna go back around to members of the public. I see a few. Any comments? Did we put you to sleep yet? Sorry. Not always interesting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 17th, 2018 meeting, please?
I'll move to minutes.
Carrie made the motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Rick seconds it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Anita, I got your, I got today, just before I was shutting my computer off, I got the, I gave it to her. I got the, Wardsboro thing.
Yep, the Bucketville News should always come out the first or the second of the month. So the e-edition came out today. Anybody who subscribes to the printed edition should get it no later than tomorrow or the next day. And so it's a challenge to write an article 20-something days in advance. So I'm just trying to keep them simple and keep people promoting, go to the website, promoting, ask a question. And if you notice, that issue also had a little micro column on the West River Gang, just for people in Wardsboro that are following along. So they continue to be very good about publishing our stuff. I also want to take this moment to acknowledge all the great work that Lauren's been doing. I can't tell you how many people come up to me and say, oh, I saw this in the Daily News, Deerfield Valley News, I saw that. So people are reading your columns and I'm hearing stuff back. So thanks for that, and yay.
Don't forget our TV guy, he's focused.
And our TV guy. There's been no incoming questions on the email from the public, which puzzles me a little bit. I don't know if you want to somehow think of a way to put that out there more, either in the school newsletters or I don't know what. It's on all the posters, ask a question. So if you think that that's important and you think that people don't know they can ask a question, I'm happy to come up with some way to promote that more. But it's been out there for as long as the Act 46 Study Committee has been together, that email to ask a question at. So that's something to think about.
Anita, just,
Yeah,
Rick and I, we have had one or two or three, we've had a few questions, haven't we, in the past?
well, there were questions prior to the Act 46 vote
Okay.
articles. There were a few questions then, but the last several months, there's been almost no questions for the public. People have emailed to that email with questions for the superintendent's office that had nothing to do with river valleys. So, they just...
You're keeping track of it, charging his office, right?
Yeah, so, like, there was a question a few weeks ago about, I'm thinking of moving to Vermont, and I'm looking at a house in Wardsboro, what's the third grade like? And so I can't answer that question, and it wasn't a question for you, it was a question for the superintendent's office, so
I think
that
that's
went.
good, because there's gonna be, increase our student count.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
well,
wonderful.
anyway, so there really hasn't been that kind of engagement. So my thought is that people are getting their questions answered at the meeting. They're getting their questions answered through the Deerfield Valley News and the Bucketville News, or by YouTube and Rick and BCTV. Or they just don't have questions and things are going along smoothly, as you always say. Going forward, as I mentioned at the last meeting, there may or may not be a cost involved at the end of the year for printing additional information about all this balloting thing. What Rick said a minute ago, that we're changing the how, when, where, and what, and the amount of voting might throw people. So by December-ish, January-ish, we really need to have a good plan in place for how we're going to communicate and inform people. So that may have to be a bigger chunk of a meeting sometime and towards the end of the year, December-ish. Front Porch Forum continues to print all our updates, no problem. The posters continue to go out, no problem. And the one thing I haven't been posting, because I don't know that things are final enough yet, are any of the new policies. So the minute any of the policies are final and voted on, make sure I get that final draft of everything. I don't want to post interim drafts or proposed drafts or.
Well, I think it's important to print proposed too, and just make sure people know it's proposed, because that's, once it's been voted on, it's pretty much set. The time we can change things, or the time we really need the input, is while they're being posted and while they're open for comment.
All right, so
period.
make sure that I get that and that I understand, because I'm more than happy to post this stuff. I just need to know exactly what you want me to post and when. So for example, the budget timeline, at the last meeting, I asked Bill, is this ready to go? And he said, wait on it. So I haven't posted that budget
I
timeline.
just wanted them to be able to.
Right, so when it's ready, that is a good example of something I can post. So that's up to y'all to decide. I don't post anything until you tell me to do it.
Yeah, so I would say go ahead and post the budget timeline now,
Okay.
because it's
You'll
not.
email that to me, please?
It's not, it's something that maybe changes a little bit, but it will be pretty close. It'll be like the budget, the timeline we did for our stuff. We're still almost dead nuts on that, so.
Yeah, okay. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is a few minutes ago, I emailed Bill and Rick a link to a PBS, a weekend news hour segment that they did on the IB program. It was a rather long segment. They did an excellent job. And they talked in detail about the global implications of it. So I don't think there's any rule against posting that on websites or promoting it. So if anytime you feel like you want to link to any of the IB stuff, that would be a good one to link to. I still haven't posted anything on the RVUSD.net website related to IB stuff at all, other than the fact that what was in the minutes, that we had a presentation. So I didn't want to put it out there because I didn't want people to think, oh, they already decided. So I'm hesitant about stuff that isn't official yet. So that's my report.
Yeah, again, as long as I don't think, and I don't speak entirely for the board, but if anybody's got a problem, I think definitely policies, I think anything like the timeline, again, the timeline says draft. To me, if I see draft, it means it's out there for discussion, and it may change, so don't rely on a draft. And I think when we adopt, so we have to vote to post, and we post any policies have to be posted for a review period of a minimum of 14 or 15 days, so I think too, as long as, if we say, hey, these are posted and their final vote's gonna be on this date, at their next meeting, I think that's important, because I think that way, if people see something that we are all missing, it would be good to know it rather than adopt it, have it all set down, and the superintendent start using it, and then somebody notice there's something we should have done different, or something doesn't work for whatever reason, so.
All right, well, I am relying on y'all to feed me that stuff so that I make sure that I have it and know that I'm supposed to stick it on the website.
Okay, so we're gonna have a discussion tonight about transportation and the campus choice policy. So I'll make sure that we get that. Bill, will you make sure that whatever we decide, we get out to her? Okay.
And like I always say, anything extra, more, additional, different that you want me to do from what stuff you're hearing from people or amongst yourselves, let me know. I'm happy to do more, whatever I can.
Okay, everybody on board here? Any thoughts? I think you're right too. Oh, I'll get 1 second, Mark. So I think you're right too. Probably the end of December, beginning of January, when the budget's kind of settled in, then I think we definitely should talk about, I think Rick brought up a really good point that I totally was spacing on, is, I think it would be good to get something out in the in the Bucketville News and out in the media that, you know, here's what the new budget looks like, but remember, don't let these numbers scare you, because if you take the two numbers from the two campuses before, you know, we've saved you money, or things went up a little bit, but it went up a little bit because we're increasing professional development, which is something everybody wanted, or, you know, whatever. So, and, you know, in Dover, we always do the cheat sheet, and the Kathy Kaufman, Charlotte Bond over/under sheets too, and maybe we can do something like that where in Dover, I always, anything that went up or down more than $500, I just say, this is why.
Yeah.
You know, well, so health insurance went up $2,000 because it was a 10% increase, or, you know, this went down because we didn't use all our product last year. So we'll work on that with you, you know, later, early winter.
Yeah, because there's two things to explain, the budget part of it and then the how, when, where, and voting part of
Right.
it, so.
And how you have to go and vote. And you
Exactly,
make an X, you
exactly.
don't
And
get
then to
discussed.
add a third element to that, we have the board seats voting to just explain and discuss as well. So there's actually 3 categories of things that people need to know about in advance. So we might have to work on that a little bit more in depth in December.
Yeah, because we could even, in December, we could start talking, just letting people know about the voting, not specifically what they're gonna vote on, but that, you know, in Wardsboro, don't plan on showing up at the town hall the Monday before town meeting day and talk about school budget.
Right there, right.
So,
Yeah, there's no discussion this year.
right, and,
So to
but
speak.
you gotta come
the
to
information
Wardsboro
meeting.
Town Hall
Right.
on February whatever for 18th,
13.
13th.
Are you going to have informational meetings? Is that
Yeah, we're
still-
required to have one informational meeting within 30 days prior to, 10 days prior to the vote. What's it, 15 days?
10 days.
10 days. So what we've decided is that whatever town the annual meeting is in,
Right.
if we're gonna vote by ballot, we'll do the informational meeting in the opposite town 10 days before. So it'll be like a week or 2 after the River Valley's meeting, the annual meeting. Okie dokie?
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot for the public to.
Yeah, and I think maybe if we can just break it down into like a little, nice little timeline, and just get rid of all the stuff that isn't pertinent, we could do like the public's voting guide timeline.
All right, let's work on that.
You know, make sure you register to vote by this day. You know, the River Valley meeting is here's the informational meeting, and here's when you actually go vote.
Right, but we're also gonna have early voting and absentee voting to explain
But
too.
you have to talk to the town clerks about, I don't know how that works.
Me either.
I think you can early vote now, can't you?
Yeah, you can vote early.
6 weeks prior.
Is it 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Early voting has already started for the midterm.
Okay. So if it's 6 weeks prior, so early voting for the river, no, there's no early voting because there'll be no paper ballots at the annual meeting, so it would just be the March meeting, so it'd be sometime in the middle of January.
January,
Yeah.
January 20th or something.
But, you know, Andy and Jackie will know that.
Right, I'll remind them to keep me filled in too.
Okay.
Thank
Oh, well,
you.
you know, you also have the thing Andy passed out,
I have that.
and that has all the dates too, so,
Right.
okay. You guys all good?
I think we're good, yeah.
Mhm.
Bill?
Is that something you
Yeah.
have you posted that, Andy? What, the thing Andy did? Has that
I
been
didn't
posted
have
to the
permission to post it yet, but I'll post it if it's
That would-
postable.
that would be
Well, you know
appropriate.
what, I'm gonna try to get Andy to the next meeting, just to see if he talked to Jackie, or at least I'll get information, so why don't at the next meeting, we
Sure.
plan on, if one of you guys can remind me in the agenda,
Andy's timeline.
yeah, why don't we put together a River Valley's timeline for the public?
I mean, that would be a perfect thing to create as its own little calendar page in the Bucketville and on the website and as a handout and as a send home for schools and just to leave in the town clerk's offices. I can think of 10 different places where we could use just a little one-page timeline or a half-page timeline.
Excellent.
Okay.
So you guys all good?
Yeah, I think we're good.
And Bill, you said you were all set?
Mhm.
Anybody out there? Yes, Mark?
In regard to the policies, for Dover, Matt has that great Google spreadsheet, which he links to off the Dover website of all the policies. I think if we'd had something like that we could link to off the website, then people can have access to and it tells you whether it's in review, whether it's draft, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's there. Bill, isn't that on the River Valley's website already?
No.
We
No.
adopted a whole bunch of policies early on.
Yeah, the policies are there. The ones that were already sort of the boilerplate ones, those are all there.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's different than Matt's spreadsheet, which I think is much more user-friendly than the WCSU's website.
Are you picking on WCSU website right now?
I'm not personal, but
Bill's never-
I am more giving Matt cred for putting together that great spreadsheet, which I just think it's very easy.
That works for you, right?
No. That works for the Dover School District. I'm the supervisor.
Can the supervisor ask Matt to do a quick spreadsheet? Or send you the spreadsheet and we can just fill in the blanks?
I can follow up with Matt about that.
Thank you. So we'll follow up on that. Thank you, Mark. And I'm sorry, I forgot that I asked you to wait a second.
All right.
You guys all set out there then? Everybody good? Okay. Thank you, Anita. Nice
thank you.
report. And you're doing a great job too. Don't let anybody tell you different.
Thank you. I'm happy to do more, whatever you need me to do.
Well, do the graph for Bill. So, under old business, review focus on Wardsboro campus work. So at the last meeting, we agreed that we would look at a new focus, or a focus for Wardsboro, not a new, something that the Wardsboro campus would be the focus of the educational program here. Bill had given us a spreadsheet and a kind of a timeline that we all felt comfortable with. I do believe that Bill's already met with Tammy and the Wardsboro staff about some stuff. So why don't you fill us in on how that's going and where we're headed? And
Yes, so our goal for October was to meet with the Wardsboro campus educators and then to follow up with meeting with the Dover campus educators and to do kind of a focus group to get some ideas from them for their focus. So I met with the Wardsboro educators on Wednesday of last week. And we did a little focus group where they came up with about 6 different areas of focus that would be intriguing and interesting to them. And then I did the same focus group today with the Dover campus educators, not revealing what the Wardsboro educators had come up with. And unsurprisingly, the Venn diagram got extremely tight and an enormous amount of things that were very, very common. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to take that information and I'm going to build an interactive survey and then get it signed off on by Tammy and Matt so that we can ask some specific questions about these areas of focus with examples of hopefully places in New England, but if not, in the United States, and hopefully with some videos that people could. So if it was about the Circus Arts School, and there's a school in Springfield, Mass. that does that, the question would be about that, but it would also allow the parents to do a little investigation to see what we were talking about so that they could be well informed while we're asking those questions. So I now have the data, so I'll be building that and then sharing it with Matt and Tammy to get approval for that, and then we will be spreading that out. Our goal is to have that happen in November for the parents in both Dover and Wardsboro campuses.
excellent. Tammy, you want to anything that
No,
Bill
I think
missed?
the process was great. It's interesting, and I'm not surprised that Dover had similar outcomes that Wardsboro did, and yeah.
It was fun. I enjoyed
It
it.
was a great process. so.
Did you get anything new? See anything that surprised you?
Well, I haven't seen Dover's results yet, so I wasn't too surprised from the Wardsboro.
I don't know, Wardsboro had a really, I'm not going to share it, but they had a really creative, I really like that structural suggestion. Fascinating. I think the educators really appreciated being asked what kinds of thing would they do, would they be curious about, interested in, would fit, would be something that they would personally enjoy, that they've recognized in their community. I thought it was really
Good.
it was nice.
Excellent.
That's great.
Yes?
Am I remembering correctly that as a parent, we'll get this survey via email? Or this, it's not something that'll come on
No,
paper?
well, I mean, I can give it to you in paper.
No, I mean, I'm
To
good
make
with
it
email,
awesome,
but,
it's definitely gonna be digital.
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Just wanna know where I'm looking.
But it'll also be available on paper. for
Yeah,
those
I'll have it
that-
in paper, but
Yeah.
the joy
Yeah.
of.
Logging
Are
in.
you all set?
I am.
Will we as a board get to see like what your ideas are of, from Wardsboro and Dover before it's put in a survey, or?
That wasn't my plan.
Okay.
No, we assign this to Bill to work with his administrators, and then we're taking hands off. So unless he needs to ask us something, I think we were gonna let him and aid staff run
After
it.
seeing both groups, I felt really comfortable. If I had felt uncomfortable and there was extremely divergent, then I might ask for a consultation. I'm very comfortable right now.
So basically, we're just gonna get some updates for the next few weeks, or next few months, and then I think it's March that we had it, I don't have it in front of me, so.
Well, depending on how the feedback we get from the parents in November, what I plan to do is in December, share out all those results to get more feedback from parents. And then we'll decide in January whether there's a need for a follow-up survey, or if we will just crystallize what we have found to prepare you all for your annual meeting on the 13th.
And then that was the idea, is to present it.
On the 13th.
Right.
Yeah.
You can, Rick, you got it?
You can keep that, I still
Yeah, you
have
can
that
keep
somewhere.
Presented
But that
as-
was sent out as in an email.
As
so you
just,
should
this
have
is
it
what
as
we
an
found
email
out.
somewhere.
Okay,
Here's what we heard.
from the survey.
Yes.
And then we'll have to move forward with how we want to proceed.
Yeah, how you want to use that data.
And it's gonna depend what the data, what it says too.
Correct. I don't know what the outcome will be.
Okay.
Well, that's a good thing. If you did, then.
Yeah. And that's why it makes it kind of fun. Yeah.
Okay, are we all good with that topic? Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
So now we get to go to a fun thing. So y'all should have somewhere a piece of paper that says,
You guys have these? These stacks right here.
Inter-District
Choice
School
policy.
Choice Program for Elementary. I just had it, and I don't know what I did with it, right here, okay. So, the River Valley's Unified School District places students in the district schools based on a student's town of residence. Transportation is provided for PK6 students attending a school within the town of residence. To accommodate occasions when a student might benefit from placement in a school outside of PK6 students' town of residence, it is the policy of the River Valley's Unified School District to offer students the option to enroll in a school of their choice within the district. Processes for intra-district choice of school will be guided by the needs of the students, space availability, and existing resources. The superintendent of schools will develop procedures consistent with the following guidelines. Requests to attend a school in another town within the River Valley's Unified School District will be granted based on space availability and with the goal of enhancing student opportunities in the best interest of students. Regardless of residency, every family will have a choice of enrolling in any grade level appropriate school operated by the district. I'm gonna just stop for 1 second while I'm thinking of it. Should we replace school with campus? Because it's one school, but it's the different campuses.
Well, this is the time to just start talking about this kind of stuff.
Okay, well, we'll go on.
No, I mean, no. I mean,
Yeah, no,
Let's go on and get to the end.
Yeah, we'll get to the end, because it's not that long. Transportation to PK6 buildings will be provided for students attending school within one's town of residence. For students choosing to attend school in a neighboring town, transportation is not provided by the River Valley's Unified School District unless utilizing existing bus route to or from the choice school, and if there is sufficient space on the bus route. Younger siblings entering school after a child who has exercised school choice may attend the same home school as his or her older sibling. School choice does not apply to non-resident students. And a parent who disputes, non-district, a parent who disputes a determination made by the superintendent in accordance with the above process is entitled to request board review of the decision. The board's determination will be considered final, and school choice procedures will be listed in school handbooks and updated and published by March 1st annually. So it's a pretty short policy because there's a lot of procedures that go with it. And then there's also some forms that Bill worked on. So I don't know if we want to just, let's talk about the policy first, then review the forms, I think.
If I may?
Yes.
So we have one board member who wasn't here who gave some feedback. Could I share it with the board?
Yeah, I thought it was covered. I thought she just,
Well, I left it so that it could be
okay.
discussed.
Shoot.
So one was in the second sentence at the very top, transportation is provided for pre-K through 6 students. Just a clarification, right now, that is different in both towns. So that would just be a point of conversation for the board to decide.
Yeah, she's got a point.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Would it be pre-K regardless of age? Because I know in Wardsboro, it's 5 if you're so age 5
Exactly.
through 6th grade?
That would be the.
Okay.
That's the
I was just curious
No,
if
yeah,
that was
exactly.
changing to like, if you're in pre-K, it doesn't matter if you're 4, or if
That
it's
is-
still staying age 5?
That was what the other board member brought up.
Okay,
Just what does that mean, written as is?
sure,
It would mean,
4.
I'm a 3-year-old, I can go,
Sure.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So just that point of clarification for that particular point.
Okay.
So what if we just change that to something along the lines of transportation is provided according to the transportation policy set forth for the campus, for the specific campus?
And then tag it back to these policies here.
Yeah.
So there'll be separate policies for each?
Well, we don't know, but that covers it if there is.
It does cover it, but.
And if there
It's
isn't,
kind of dicey though.
You just don't want to lock yourself into
well,
something. you're
or
not
we can
willing
just
to
put
do.
transportation provided as per the district policy.
Yeah, district policy.
How about that?
But then the district will have the same policy?
It is
Well,
policy.
no,
No,
we could
no,
have a
no.
policy that's different for each campus too.
Yeah.
It's common for one policy to refer to another policy,
Right.
if it's a subsidiary.
It's referring to itself. This is the district policy.
No, the
The
transportation
transportation policy.
is provided as per
Oh,
the
sorry.
as per the
Sorry.
district transportation policy. And that makes it really
I think
simple.
that's good for now. Yeah.
Okay.
Transportation is
Myself, I don't know
provided
what you think.
As per,
We haven't determined the
Yeah,
district.
absolutely. It should be-
transportation
as
should
per the
policy. It should be
district.
Part of it.
District policy.
And then you could change that transportation policy without changing
Yeah,
the
that would make much more sense.
perfect.
RVUSD trans policy. Okay, all right, and then the second one is the second bullet down. What does that mean? Is it confusing? Is it necessary?
See, and I go back to my comment while I was reading,
Yeah.
is I think it makes it much more, to me, it makes more sense if we put enrolling any grade level appropriate campus operated by the district. Because you have the ability to, you have the choice if you want to ask to enroll in a different campus, it's just you have to follow the policy.
Right, so the other board member was asking for my interpretation to make sure that I asked you guys. As you read this, does it mean that you get the choice? You want the choice, you get it,
That's what it says.
Yeah.
right?
You get the
No
opportunity.
question about it.
Right, so,
You have the opportunity.
right,
It doesn't say that, though.
Well,
that's why we're
change-
that's the.
Change choice opportunity.
So regardless of residence, every family will have an opportunity.
To request
To
enrollment.
request
Well, I was
enrollment.
gonna say,
Okay, have an opportunity.
Then that's the first bullet.
Well, that's why I was wondering if it was necessary at
So
all.
get rid of it.
Yeah.
The simpler, the remember policy, right?
No, I like that.
Okay,
Hang on
so
one second, and we'll get back to Nita.
on page 2, the exact same one, second bullet, in the
Let's
procedure.
not confuse it, so you make sure, that you bring that up when we get to the procedure.
I got you.
Okay, Anita,
On bullet number 1, where it says request to attend, would it be more descriptive if it said written applications to attend at school in another town?
no, because that way he can change his procedures may change and it may not require something in writing.
Okay, so you could
So
just call them
I
up?
think we go request to attend a campus
Just period within the River Valley.
campus within within the River Valley Unified School District, we granted
Request to attend a
a campus in another town.
Is that something we've talked about, changing, we've talked about creating a campus, I know, is that something we voted on to call it a campus?
Well,
Or
it
did we create-
is a campus
Well,
because
it's a
it's not,
school.
there's no longer the Dover School and there's
Cause I
no
kn-
longer a
cause I kn-
Wardsboro School.
Well, there is, it's a school, there's two schools. And I know
There's-
Dover put in one of they requested that they remain the Dover Elementary School in one of their bullet points.
But it isn't.
But do we need to vote on that?
No. Because they're campuses, they're not schools. There's no more Wardsboro School. We already voted on that.
Is that something, Bill, that's going on in other districts? I mean, is Jamaica not called the Jamaica School any longer, or is that other areas?
That has definitely not been discussed, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think it does need to be
We'll
voted
get to you
on.
in 1 second. I think we voted on it when we voted to combine the district.
Show me where it says that. I mean, where does it say that?
It doesn't say a lot of things. It doesn't say that we're gonna meet in the Wardsboro School, but we do. Go ahead.
So my first thing is, I'm just thinking back to last week with the transportations, may and will. And so in that first bullet, should it read that it may be granted based on space availability, and with the goal versus it will be granted? Because that says that it's not gonna be considered that if you request it, you'll get it. Right, instead of it, like,
The second line?
the first
May
bullet,
versus
request to attend a school, campus, whatever we decide that it is, within the River Valley's Unified School District, it says it will be granted based on space availability and with the goal of enhancing student opportunities, but shouldn't it be, it may be granted because it may not be, like,
Well, May does give the,
May gives the superintendent a little bit more leeway, where Will says if it's not a problem with space availability,
there's no reason to deny it.
and there might be some other situation
Yeah,
that's.
that's a good point. I mean, you do want to use will very, very specifically.
I'm just thinking about the conversation we had last week with the
Well, I think it was
transportation
the
may
tr-
versus will.
but it was a charge of the group and the Act 46 Study Committee said that one of the ways we allow for educational enhancement is to allow students to move back and forth. So I think it's taking a few, I think it's making it harder for the superintendent to say no unless it's a space issue and it's not in the best interest of the student. And I think that gives it, so think down the road, so a parent asks Bill, I want my child to go to the other campus, and Bill says no, and then we get to a meeting and, Bill, why'd you say no? Well, I said no because I didn't think the child would do very well there, and the child doesn't like green, and the building's painted green or whatever, and then we say, well, Bill, it only says that you can only not grant it if there's space. Is there space availability? Yes. And will it enhance that student's opportunity and be in the best interest of students? Then I think it just makes it a little bit easier for the board to make a decision. If you leave it, then the board has to decide without knowing everything about a student. It makes it harder for us to make a determination, I think. I think the more you limit the more you limit the availability without not factual basis. And to me, is there enough room in the campus? It's a yes or no answer. It's not, there can't be any
I
discussion.
mean, if it says may, you can still base it on those things. It's just saying that there might be some other circumstance that it doesn't, I don't care, I'm just pointing that out because last week there was a lot of discussion versus may versus may versus will. So I noticed that. I was just asking the question, but I do have a second question if I'm allowed to ask it.
Okay, well, let's work on this question. Hold
Okay.
your second one.
Okay.
Okay. Board, somebody weigh in?
Are there other considerations of why we would deny a request to attend one campus versus the other, like you said, other than space availability?
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Teacher.
student opportunity,
Well,
best
no,
interest.
it also states in the guidelines,
No,
I'm sorry.
The guidelines aren't, you gotta go by policy first.
Okay.
So I think we should work on the policy.
Well, in addition to space availability, you're also, the other factor is reducing the size of the classroom size in the
Well,
other
does-
schools.
right, does that-
So that's not, but that's not in here.
Does that include is space availability just limited to the physical space within the building? Or meaning like the classroom size, student-teacher ratio, right?
This really does, Bill, it basically says as long as there's classroom size, any student can
Right,
move.
that's right.
Is that what we wanted to do?
Does say guided by existing
I-
resources also.
Yeah, see, I'm going on that last sentence of the second paragraph. Processes for inter-district choice of school be guided by the needs of student space availability and existing resources. The superintendent of schools, so it's what Dwight was pointing to, will develop procedures consistent with the following guidelines, right? But I think what Dwight's bringing up that I don't think this addresses, I'm not trying to guess your mind here, but this is talking about availability for space. I think what you're bringing up is the idea that we would restrict leaving.
That's right. So if you're creating a classroom size that's too small in another, and that was in another one of the policies from another district that you had
Right.
presented, so.
So do we want to put that in there? So is that fair to say your child can't go to another campus because we don't want to empty this campus? And we don't, because that's one of the things we also didn't want to do. Mark, specific to that topic.
It's a bigger picture question or comment. This policy, to me, feels like it has multiple personality disorder. It talks about, starts off by saying a student might benefit from, and then the policy essentially says, if there's room, the student can go. Those two don't work together.
Well, it also says, and with the goal of enhancing student opportunities in the best interest of the student. So the student can't just go to the other campus because he doesn't feel like going to this campus.
Well-
He wants a change. I mean,
Let me finish. The questionnaire that's in here, the form that's part of this,
yeah, the
does,
policy comes first. The form is, we're not even discussing the form yet.
but
So
it goes hand in hand. It doesn't ask any questions.
Once we get a policy, then we'll create a form.
Okay?
The policy has to come first because procedures are based on policy. So this, we probably then shouldn't even have done this, and we probably should have just handed out the
Yeah,
policy.
right.
So we gotta get the policy down first, and then you do the procedure, and that's how any policies have ever been adopted.
I was just going by what's here, but I have one other
Okay,
comment.
so throw the rest of it out.
That's fine, I will.
Cool.
Um,
Specific to this, because she's before you, she had a question on another, so we're talking about bullet point number 1. Is your comment on bullet point number 1?
It leaves out a word, so no.
Okay.
It's not.
Hang on a second. Let's go, are we all set on bullet point number 1, that we don't like it, we gotta make some kind of change in Bill's over here, like,
It's almost there.
No, this is a big deal.
Right.
This doesn't
we
have to
knew
be
this
done
wasn't gonna
tonight.
be easy.
Absolutely not, no.
Okay, so you had another question, so let's get to
I'm not
yours.
even sure if it's a question, it might just be, I think it's more of a comment,
That's
actually,
fine.
but, I was just listening to the conversation, and I know it's come up at pretty much every meeting that I've attended of the name of the school versus the name of the district. And, like, Brattleboro currently is under one school district, correct? And they have 4 different elementary schools that all have different names. So I'm a little bit confused at the hang up on why we can't be River Valley's Unified School District with a Dover school campus and a Wardsboro school campus. And I feel like every time it comes up, there's no Dover school, there's no Wardsboro school. But we're just one school district with 2 schools, just like Brattleboro has one school district with 4.
And what are all the names of
campuses.
the 4 schools, do you know?
I know there's Green Street and Academy.
And do you know why it's called Academy?
I don't. But
Anybody?
I don't really care.
Well, no, it's important, I think.
Okay,
They were named after the streets they were on.
sure.
So, I mean, if you want, we could have the Dover School District the River Valley School District and the Route 100 campus and the Dover Hill Road campus. The reason we've been talking campus is because we're trying to become a unified school district, and And it's just like at Twin Valley, when Wilmington and Whitingham combined, they got rid of everything that said Wilmington and Whitingham, and they did stuff to say Twin Valley.
But they merged
They
into
merged,
one
that's
building.
different.
If we all, if all
No,
of
not
our-
originally.
So, but
They
all-
still had some people down in Whitingham and still had some
when
people
they
in
became Twin
Wilmington.
Valley, they had all of their elementary kids together, and they had all their middle school kids together, and they had all their high school kids together. Because I remember that merger happening. So it wasn't that Wilmington kept their
Okay,
elementary.
So let me do this. Let's
I-
hold that for another time.
That's
because
fine. I
let's
just
get-
I feel like
let's
it
get-
spends a lot of time, and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's that.
Let's get this policy worked out,
Okay.
and then we'll come back to that. Mark, you had another question on this policy.
Yes.
Okay.
All the bullet points, with the exception of the second to last one, talk about a child making the decision. The second to last one says a parent can dispute it. I think you need to be consistent. Either the parent's making the decision, or the child's making the decision, and then the child has to dispute it.
Where's
It's
it say it's a
required.
family?
Oh, well, like the
Request.
fourth one up from the bottom, younger siblings entering into school after a child has exercised the school choice. So the child exercised the school choice, not the parent.
That's the only place I see it.
So maybe adding family like it does in the second one that's gonna come out.
Disputes.
And do you always have
Maybe
to
I
say
saw it in the
parent
next
or
page.
and/or guardian, or do you just default to parent?
Yeah, that's-
It doesn't say anywhere that a child applies for this. It just says the child exercised, so the child exercised it through his parent. I mean, so I don't know if it makes that much of a
I would
difference.
take out the word parent. I think
So,
it could be guardian. I mean, it could be a lot of things.
so
Put it in instead of child.
who can dispute it to the board? So
It would
Legal
if
guardian.
Legal guardian.
yeah, because I'm gonna say, like, I can't go dispute it
No,
if
a
Rick's
legal
child
guardian.
won't.
Legal guardian.
1, 2, that's-
Where you're having school choice versus campus, again, the language, you're
Well,
kind
I
of
guess
confusing it to
Dwight, I
different
kind of
places.
thought we had pretty much settled on campus. Dwight doesn't think we have, and Dwight wants to have a vote, so
Well,
I have
just-
to look into that and
Just so that
see
you
how
have
that
it, it's
works.
repeated, school choice, school
So I think
choice.
we're just gonna have to leave that up to
Yeah.
a future discussion. So,
I don't know, might be, if you have time.
what on this?
Yeah, on
Yeah,
this.
no, go ahead.
I was wondering why we have the transportation in the policy at all. Isn't transportation a separate policy? I mean, wouldn't this kind of pigeonhole us if we ever change down the road about the transportation? Shouldn't that be part of the transportation policy?
I think it's a pretty big decision, because if somebody just reads this and doesn't read the transportation
Right.
policy, at least I think we spell it out here that,
But we make changes down the road, we're gonna have to change both policies. That's not big a deal, but they seem like two separate issues to me.
Or at least they know that if they're
I
making
mean-
a choice about campus, if it's the different campus, transportation's not necessarily gonna be provided, so that's important
That
in
enters
decision
into the
making.
decision that the parent
Right,
is gonna
Right.
make.
but if it's
Certainly,
offered,
the
necessary.
policy would be with the application form, I guess, or whatever they could be described, but it just seems like you're putting this in this, and this could change, certainly, over time.
which I think would be then a benefit, right? Like,
do
for the
we,
parent that says, great, I chose the other school, or the other campus, I wasn't gonna get transportation, when I made that decision, that's okay, but now I actually get to.
Mhm.
That's great, that's not a negative. But I think it's important, if we're not going to offer transportation to other campuses, to let people know up
Well,
front.
certainly, it's important, but I don't know if it needs to be in the policy.
because if you look at this, we talk about, in the top, we talk about, based on the student's town of residence, transportation as per the district transportation policy. And then we talk about to accommodate this, process and whatnot, and then we rehash the process again. I mean, I guess if you wanna we could rip this up and just start all over again, but usually a policy, and remember the old policies, Bill, used to have like, purpose, there was like 5, Rick, help me.
Yeah, it was an objective, right?
Yeah,
And it was,
well, here's why we're doing it, here's how would, and here's, and I think that's kind of what this is that the first two sentences are kind of like a broad statement about,
Yeah.
about what inter-school choice is. And then I think the nuts and bolts of it is after the superintendent will develop procedures. And I think those are kind of like the policy thing. So it's almost the top is a policy statement. Who does a lot of policies? I haven't done policies.
So
Don't
Doug,
remember.
Dwight makes a good point, though, that the third bullet, where it starts with transportation, if we're gonna change the second sentence of the opening,
Yeah.
you don't need that first sentence.
Mhm.
It should just be,
It's already stated above.
Right.
That you're providing.
you should
within the
just start it
district.
with 4.
But we
students
state
choosing.
above too, that process for choices will be guided by the needs of the students, and we discuss it again below that.
Or I'm just saying, you should either get rid of this beginning, transportation to pre-K 6 building,
Oh, okay.
because you already talked about
Right.
transportation
I
is
see.
provided.
So you're just saying the sentence goes away. That
The
first
sentence just
goes
one
away.
sentence,
and it
right?
begins with for students choosing.
But I agree with Carrie that it's really important to be very upfront in the policy that, hey, if you choose to go to another location, do not count on transportation. Even though we could reference it in the transportation
Yeah,
policy.
I agree with that.
I think it's
completely. I just
really
think-
valuable
So
when
we're
you
gonna take
are.
that first sentence out.
Oh, I agree with it, but the problem is if we change policies down the road, then we have to change transportation policy. They're two separate things. So if we change it, it's very important that everyone understand what they're getting themselves into.
No, I
But-
agree.
but
I'm just
this-
saying, if
this-
I'm reading
If we
this,
change down the road and we decide to have a bus go through the whole district, then we've got to change.
Then
this
we do
policy.
have to change
We change
it.
both policies, and that's fine.
But then
that's what
they'd
we're
still
doing.
covered, because unless utilizing existing bus routes. So if we make an existing bus, if we make a new bus route that goes through, then it becomes an existing bus route. And
I
then
think
we're
the
covered.
point is that because it's new, we gotta be really transparent.
Right.
You're not getting transportation.
So I think the other thing, Bill, is under cross-reference down below, we should see transportation
Okay, yeah.
too, and on transportation, we should make a note to see interdistrict school choice program.
Got it. Okay.
And then that way we're both there.
Yep, I can do that.
So do you want to just organize this a little bit of where
Well, I
like kind
think-
of the goal?
Well, I'll
No,
play
no,
with
no,
your
no,
edits.
I'm just saying, just so people understand, I mean, there used to be a format for policies, and that's what I'm looking at here. This looks like the old format where you have kind of like a mission statement, and then you have,
But it doesn't state it. The
Right.
old one
They
used to
just do
state
it.
it what it was, you
right,
know,
so
objective.
I'm just saying, when
purpose.
you look at that, that's just how you have to look at the policy, because things will be repeated in there sometimes in a policy more than once, because, you know, it doesn't say up top the superintendent needs to make his decision based on this. It does down below. So, Bill, you got the changes?
I've got the edits that you've got, and I think we also have to remember, you guys will roll this out, and then you'll figure out what needs to change. It's a month to change it.
So, you know, I don't see us voting to adopt this.
No, I need to make these changes.
Right. So why don't you make these changes, get it to us, and we can have this discussion at the next meeting?
I won't be here, but I will get it.
No, that's fine. So Mark, we're gonna discuss this again. So when you make those changes, Bill, the procedures, we don't vote on procedures anyways.
No, that's just
So-
backup.
Right, so let's not send the procedures out, because I think they're gonna confuse matters. Because we don't get us,
Got it. And one, I can change procedures like that.
That's all.
what's funny?
That it would confuse people.
Well, it does, because procedures are not set in stone, so procedures are guidelines, and policy is, it has to be done. I mean, that's why we've moved away from, you know, the school board used to have 200 and some odd policies. And we moved away from that, because if the policy says Mark comes in and laughs while the chair is talking,
Gets
you know,
kicked
he
out.
gets kicked out of the meeting, you have to get kicked out of the meeting. We can't say, well, that was funny and let's stay.
Which
So-
is the same point I brought up at the last meeting,
What's that?
which was that you didn't want the policy to be very specific, because then you're pigeonholing yourself, that it needs to
We
be,
need-
which
we
is what you
We
did.
need certain things to be specific,
Right.
because we don't wanna say, hey, the superintendent gets to decide if you get to move or not. So the superintendent can say, hey, Mark laughed at me at a meeting, so your kid ain't never moving. And, you know, if it says that the superintendent gets to make the decision, then come to us and there's nothing we can do. That's why some things have to, I think, be specifically spelled out. And then I think the procedure is, you know, something that works for both the board, the parents, and that can be changed just by the superintendent, so.
You are, in the future, though, gonna have to give me some guidance about how to design the procedure to match the goals,
Right.
which are,
But the goals should be stated in the policy.
but I think
so-
Dwight presciently brought up a goal that doesn't exist in this policy,
Which is,
which is not emptying out of school.
well, then I think we should put that in the policy if that is something we really want. Because I don't know if we ever actually had that vote on that. So,
All right,
why
I'll-
don't you add something?
Okay.
Just, you know, I think part of that first bullet can be, you know, is there space availability and what does it do?
We have it here on, on your guidelines and procedures. It says, and with the goal of creating balanced
Right.
class sizes in all schools.
Does existing resources not cover that, though?
Yeah, maybe.
It's the superintendent's job to make
Not
sure that the
normally.
existing resources are allocated appropriately. That would include class size, I would think.
But
I
you're,
mean, it's not specific.
yeah, I mean, would you feel comfortable if that sentence was put in the policy?
So let me ask the board this question. So Bill makes a decision not to allow a child to move from one building to another based on he doesn't want to empty, and the parent comes in, Mark comes in and says,
Right.
I want my kid moving, I don't care what you say, and Bill's reason is stupid. Do you feel you have enough light to stand on? Because you can't go to the procedures.
Right.
No.
All you can do
No,
is,
it's gotta-
I have nothing to stand on. There is nothing in the
Right.
policy that says, I want to go to, there's something in here that says, I want to go to Wardsboro and there's no space available. But there's nothing in there that says, I want to go to Wardsboro, there's space available, and you just feel bad because there's only 3
boys,
boys in the second grade classroom.
right, now you're
Well, you're
taking,
reducing, there was language in, I don't have it, there was language in
We
one of
have
the
one
other
of the
policies.
other policies.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll
similar.
look to that.
but I think we need that in there because we would need that if that was part of the decision-making process. And we've all agreed for right now that we don't want to empty either building out. And it could go, you know, people always are worried about Wardsboro losing things, but I'm actually more worried about people wanting to get out of their Dover building because they want to come over to Wardsboro because there's less students, and then you have a big drain the other way, and then all of a sudden you got 60 kids trying to fit in one classroom because it's combined grades and you got 30 in each grade. Plus the teacher probably kills. With 60 students, Tammy probably kills. So, Bill, you've got a bunch of stuff, and
So, yeah.
you'll make us a little cleaner copy, and then I think it'll be easier to look at without. And can you please get it to Anita too?
In this state?
No, in your change state, when you change it.
Okay.
Because that's the next thing we're gonna be looking at, and then people can make comments.
Okay. Got it. I will send it to Anita.
Okay, and then I think, remind me on the next agenda, guys, and girls, that I wanna, under old business, have discussion of campus terms. View campus policy submitted possible vote, so we're not gonna vote on that. Is everybody okay on that? Is there any other comments before?
I just want to go back to Tennille's comment. I do think may
To who?
and will are important.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I don't know if you got that
Bullet
down there,
one.
Bill, or not, but I mean, I do think that's, you know,
I got it.
I don't want to pigeonhole you, and I don't think anybody on this board wants to pigeonhole you into, these are the only reasons, because it will happen.
One thing I would like to do with you guys after you get a policy that you feel comfortable with is I'd like to run through some scenarios.
Because we don't know all the scenarios
Right.
now, and that's why I think keeping them ambiguous
I think that
might
was my
help us in the
thinking,
first
is
year or
that
two.
you think you can sort of
Something
fan it
will come
out,
up
and
that you
something's
don't
gonna
know what it's
come
going
across
to
the
be
table, and
until
you're
it
gonna go, crap, nobody accounted for this, now.
so, but he has the ability then, if that wasn't accounted for, to come to the board and ask their opinion. And the one problem I have as a board member who's had a few of these hearings because of policies is it makes it very difficult on the board if it isn't pretty black and white. Because we don't have as a board, so I don't know if everybody's aware, Rick will probably tell you, I don't know if you've been to one yet, I know you've been to a couple, and you've got the legal background. So we're a quasi-judicial board, so let's say your child wants to go somewhere, Bill says no. Bill doesn't tell me, hey, I denied this girl's request for her child, whatever. So what happens is Bill says to me as a chair that at the next meeting, we need to have an executive session to discuss a student concern on the policy, on the interdistrict policy. So what happens is we sit up here like the Supreme Court, and Bill comes in and you come in and you present your case. I wanted my child to go to this building and I asked for it, and I did this and that. And then Bill says, hey, I denied the request because of da-da-da-da-da. We get to ask some questions, and we can't say, well, when we can't say, well, what color eyes does your child have? Because that makes, we're kind of specific things we can request, we can ask. We don't get the history of your child. We don't get to know about the background. We don't get to know maybe there were some conflicts with staff, because that can't be brought to us because that's a personnel issue. So we have to base our decision on just what is presented to us at that meeting. So if Rick says, oh, I know her and she's just whiny and she doesn't care and she's just doing it to make I would say, Rick, you're out of line, and we can't even take that into consideration. We have to base it on the facts that are presented to us, and then we have to relate it to what the law says, and the law is the policy. If the policy's up in the air, then we're gonna make a decision not based on all the facts that, just to me, it makes it a lot more difficult, and it makes for much poorer decisions on a board level. And I think Carrie might speak to it, when you have laws that are a little bit out there and not very specific, sometimes it's hard to relate that to get people to understand why a decision was made. So that's the only reason I want to see, it needs to be somewhat specific to allow us, if we have to have a hearing, to decide in the best interest of the child.
Right.
But wouldn't that still, because all it's saying is that it may be granted if you meet all of those guidelines. And so if they're still meeting those guidelines, and we're trusting as the public that our superintendent, so whether it's Bill or it's 20 years from now and it's somebody else, or whoever is sitting up there as the board, you know what I mean? Like I'm saying, longevity, it may not be you guys, but
It won't be me. I'll be in the ground somewhere.
But I think all I'm saying is it allows for that that situation that could arise that doesn't allow for that child to move, but we didn't account for it here because we didn't know X scenario was going to come across, and that's where that comes in, because they may be denied that. They may.
So, hang on a second, because then let me go a little further, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up. So, the superintendent has to act on the policy. Now, the superintendent may come to us and say, hey, look, the policy says I have to do this, but I don't think this is in the best interest of the child.
Okay.
The board can make that variation. So, a superintendent may even say to you as a parent, look, I have to deny you, but you go before the board, and I will recommend to the board that they break their policy on this specific case, and the board can do that.
I can't do it.
He can't do it.
So it may happen.
So he, or you could say to him, hey, I'd like you to take this to the board because, I think that it's a bad decision and this is why, and he may agree. And then if he comes in, he may not tell us all the background about the child because we don't need to know that, just that it's his recommendation they do that. And I've never seen a board, I can't say that. So there is that ability for the board to break the policy.
We're not breaking the policy.
We're not breaking, we're making an
You're
exception.
hearing an appeal
Right.
to how the policy was applied.
And the other thing too on this, and I said this to Bill, and it doesn't show here, usually policies have a 2 to 4 to 5 year review date. This one we said we wanted a 1 year review date, so because of it's such a new situation, we're gonna be, talking about focus of campuses. We're gonna be talking about the programs offered. So we thought that it would be really important that this, for at least the first couple years, get reviewed every year. It may not change every year, but that again took into account some conversations that we had when we were setting up the agenda about this, because we know that it is gonna be a tough thing for the first few years, because it's new to all of us, because there isn't been a school in Wyndham Central that's had a policy like this before.
I think that makes a difference, and that actually feels better.
And the board can actually review it earlier if they find if Bill comes to us and says, in June that, hey, look, I had 20 applications and they're all, because of this, we can review it and amend it, and he can postpone his decisions too.
Okay.
Mark, and then I think you want
Yeah. I mean, I just, right, we have to go based on the policy, and the policy just says space availability, and I'm not even sure I know what that even means. So, you're gonna have to tell us, I'm assuming,
no,
that,
that's-
well, they've got 18 kids and 19 just pushes them over the edge, or is there a policy that 18 is the maximum?
So that's your second package.
That's our second, right.
That's
So
what
we know
we'll
what
get to.
maximums are and minimums, right?
Well, that's what I need the board to.
That's what we need to decide, so, that's the other thing too. So that makes our life a lot easier if they say, well, we got 18, our policy is 18, or whatever the number is, right? That makes our life a lot easier too.
Right.
Bullet 1, the last part says in the best interest of students. Is the intent of that to be the best interest of the student or students in general? Because if it's students in general, then you're giving, right there, you're giving the superintendent an awful lot of leeway.
Is that specific to that student that's making the request, or is that for the whole entire
Fair point.
River Valley's Unified School District?
Student
So we took that from the last sentence of the second paragraph, just looking at the needs of students, so best interest of students, keeping in that same voice.
And it says of students, not of the student.
Correct. Needs of students, best
Let's,
interest
Mark,
of
let's do
students.
this. Let's let him rewrite it so we can look at a cleaner copy, and then we'll beat it up again.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, right.
No, I mean, it's, sometimes it's
That's
hard.
good, yeah,
It gets,
You get
and let
little
it,
bits and pieces here.
yeah, and let
That's
it
great.
sink in a
Gotta
little
start
bit.
somewhere.
You guys
And
can
I'm
go
sure,
to town next week. I will not be.
yeah, we're gonna really, next week though, we're gonna restrict, our next meeting, we're gonna restrict it. Because Bill has to then watch the video.
Oh, no, they're great. They give me the time. I'm like, okay, what do I have to watch?
Is that okay with everybody? We move on from that? But that's why we wanted to have this and have discussion and
That's
also
great.
get it out there. So if you hear from other people too, you can bring other people's concerns. And, review of transportation policy. This will be a lot easier. Guarantee it, because we're getting skinny on time. So Bill had a package he handed out. So there's the Dover School Board District policy. You guys all have that?
Yeah.
And then there's the Wardsboro's policy. There's Dover, here's Wardsboro's.
Yeah.
And then we have C3 required. This was Bill's, no, this was not an attempt. This was a boilerplate one,
Bill has
correct?
done nothing.
Yep. And then the other question that was asked was, what do we currently do with the different schools? They're all the same. So you got multiple there. Do
Yeah,
you have
it's just-
Wardsboro?
Yep.
Yep. Dover. Here's Wardsboro.
I've got all the Dovers.
Okay, there's Wardsboro.
Thank you.
So there's Dover, Wardsboro current, there's a boilerplate from VSBA, and then, that's this one, do you have that?
Now we do.
And then there's the Dover, there's Transportation 2018-2019, which includes secondary, and it's the Wardsboro campus, Dover campus. So, I think, since this has kind of been out there, did anybody on the board get a chance to look at it when Bill sent it out last week?
Oh, yeah.
I read it.
Okay.
Can't vote it.
Anybody from the public get to see it ahead of time, or was this part of the email with the agenda, Bill, or not? This doesn't go out with the agenda.
This?
Right.
No.
This was a separate
Okay.
email he sent out to everyone.
So why doesn't you guys take a look at it out there? While you guys are looking at it, does anybody on the board have any questions, comments, thoughts?
This is required, everything's on here is required?
Yeah, usually the
It says required at the top,
VSBA
so yes.
it's, transportation is a required policy, and there's certain things that are required in it, but remember, transportation is not required for regular education students.
Right, that's why it's written, so that you can decide to even furnish transportation or not, but you're required to have a policy.
I see.
So, I have a suggestion that I think it would be valuable to work from the required policy. And in the second half of the required policy, I believe that this board, because of the currently operating two different transportation systems, one owning own buses, one contracting, that it would be really valuable to have a actual transportation subcommittee. I know you guys don't like subcommittees, but people that really want to dig in and dive in from the board's goals for transportation. And then take this as the model and feed it back, but get rid of everything that says the superintendent will. I'll do it. But my guess is that you want a much more intense connection to your community by having a actual transportation committee. Because if you employ bus drivers, you're going to want them a part of it. If you're going to want to talk to your road commissioners. Or you can say, nope, make it happen, Bill, and I'll do that too.
Why are you guys laughing?
Barry said
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Dover has a subcommittee now, correct? Okay, that's all, that was my question.
Yeah, basically, the subcommittee is just for determining bus stops. So it has, we haven't used it for the transportation policy, but we really haven't changed the policy ever since I can remember.
No.
We have reviewed it and made no changes. Okay, so here, let me throw this out then. Would the board like to charge a subcommittee to work on a transportation policy? And my only comment is, my thought was, we would adopt a policy, because that's board's job, but we could have a transportation subcommittee work on the specifics of the transportation within the guidelines of the policy. I think if you give them the policy to work too, then the board kind of loses control. And maybe the subcommittee says, their recommendation is we're gonna pick up every child at their home with a limo and take them wherever they're gonna go and bring them back. And if one of the things with subcommittees is I like to take a lot of their recommendations, because if we don't, then subcommittees aren't gonna wanna do anything, because they said, every subcommittee the board has ever charged, you haven't done what they wanted to, and I just find that to be a little troublesome. And again, we can make it a one-year policy that we review in a year, or if the subcommittee finds something that we really messed up on, we can review it at any time and make changes.
You can charge a subcommittee with guidelines to keep them, to keep them within certain ranges.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep.
Do what we want you to do and nothing else.
Exactly.
So rubber stamp what we want.
Do you know
So,
what
and I
you-
just,
do you know what you want, though?
I kind of know what I want, but it doesn't matter what I want. So,
1/6 of it matters.
yeah, but I mean, no, because I usually very rarely vote. The chair only votes to break or create a tie on small boards. Rick, you've had lots of experience with transportation.
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, really?
Transportation has been, we pretty much have it's always been subbed out. So it was
But I mean a
determined.
policy, because you guys had to have a policy.
Yeah, no, this policy was written a long time ago, and really wasn't
Okay.
reviewed that much, so. No, I don't have a lot of experience with the transportation policy or how it should work.
So, Dwight, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. I think, I think it's a good idea to go with this and then go down, but, is it really necessary to have, I'm not sure if I know what exactly are the things, the big, that we're trying to decide. Is it the money issue, or is it just how we do things? Like,
I think it's gotta be all of it
It's all
together,
of it
because
together.
nothing lives in a vacuum.
Right. Yeah, I was surprised to hear the cost, right, I should know that's the cost for what we're paying in Wardsboro. Seems pretty high, so I don't know that took into consideration.
Hang on, let me get
But-
Carrie, and then we'll get back to the
Yeah.
audience. You all set, sir?
Yeah.
So Bill, who were you anticipating the committee consulting with the road commissioner, with the bus drivers, or them
Or they
being part of the committee?
So I was imagining that the board would decide on what goals they wanted to create through the policy.
Mhm.
And then, because it's at the very, very beginning, it would be helpful, just imagining, let's say there's 2 people on the board that were like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea.
Mhm.
It would be really nice to have people that, on the board, that could become much more comfortable in the world of transportation because of the merging. You're not just contracting with a group. You're gonna have to decide on, are we gonna own buses as a group?
Right.
Why are we gonna own buses? Are we, do we know who the road commissioners are? Is it good for us to own buses or not buses? Why would that be? Where can we actually have routes where we can't? I was looking at it more as like a knowledge-based buildup for a new group, that this might be an opportunity, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's simply, you guys just want to create a policy. It's a lot of moving parts when you have 7 through 12
Two
transportation.
different types.
You have different pre-K transportation, you have different K-6 transportation, you own buses, you don't own buses. It just
But we
feels
also
like
don't, we also contract with the same.
you
people
contract
that
with
do-
other, right, so
Other-
it's a big kind of enchilada that I think would be really nice for community representatives to know.
So,
Would
you know.
they be part of the board?
I
Or would
would
it
say
just be a
that
two-
this would just
If
be
it's a
happening
committee,
here, and
it
then
has
you'd
to be
reach out and
separate.
consult as necessary.
Two-board enchilada, in other words.
Yeah,
Okay, two-member.
I'm just, it could be 3, I'm just
Or
saying.
it could be one or none.
Because if the 6 of you try to go through
Right.
all those elements, I'm imagining many, many meetings.
So one of the things that came up though, what Lori said was that, one of the things that you're doing with your administrators is
Yeah.
looking at transportation and the allocation and maybe, well, to start off with the budget. And the other thing is, if you really read the sample policy, it's very loose, which isn't bad, because then the board can vote, and we instead of the superintendent will establish routes, we can say, a transportation subcommittee established by the board will vote the routes.
Sure.
And then so the guideline is the policy, those are your boundaries.
Yep.
And then the transportation subcommittee, who we would determine what the makeup is. We could say, a couple parents from each side of the hill and a staff member and the road commissioners and, the administrators, whatever we want to make the group. And then they
Have
would
reps
come,
from that,
they have to come up with the routes. And the board always, by state law, is required to approve the routes annually,
Right.
30 days prior to the start of school. So, I think kind of that's already there.
Yeah, it's just, I think there's like a list of about 12 different decisions you guys are gonna have to give. You either are gonna have to make as a board, you're gonna have to list those questions and give guidance on those. Are we gonna provide transportation to pre-K students? Are we gonna own buses?
Well, that's something we give to the subcommittee.
Right, but I think the board needs to give that guidance. We need these questions answered or something like that.
Whether we own buses or go outside,
Sure.
does that need to be is it in the policy?
No, but it's so
That would
hand in
be-
glove of
Yeah.
budgeting.
But see,
Oh,
this-
absolutely.
this
I
is
mean,
what-
it all comes together. I get
Right.
that. Do you know what I mean? What I'm saying
Good
is,
point.
in the policy itself, do we need
No.
to
No.
say whether
No.
we're going to own buses or whether
No,
we're
because
not?
if you say that the district will own 2 buses.
then you
until
got to own
change-
buses all the
Right.
time.
And
You know what I
based
mean?
on-
Until you change
You're
the
gonna
policy.
provide transportation.
But also,
Yeah.
here's
and we
the,
may provide transportation.
here's the pain in the ass
May
thing.
not.
They may,
Is that,
yeah, they may.
the
Right.
state of Vermont says supervisory unions can't own property,
Mhm.
including buses, right?
Can't own
But school districts can. So River Valley's school district can own a bus, Unified School District
You can.
can own
Right.
equipment.
Right.
But the SU can't, but the state wants the SU to run everything. So basically, what the state said was, hey, we don't want to own any buses in the state. We want somebody else to own them all. And, when Todd buys a bus, he pays sales tax, 6 or 7%. He pays tax on the fuel, he pays tax on the tires, The Goodyear guy when I would go get cruiser tires, he would call it the giveaway price, because we're buying tires on the government bid package less than he can buy them as a Goodyear, exclusive Goodyear distributor. So we create all this extra expense, which makes no sense at all. I mean, you can get around it by the school district can order the tires, and we can order the fuel, and, there's other ways you can get around it, but they make it so that it's not just like a cut and dry thing where if a supervisory union could buy 50 buses or, the cars, what you're looking for the special ed transportation, how much easier would that have been if you guys could have just gotten the cars? You can buy them so much cheaper, pay somebody to run them, and Mark, you had a...
2 questions. One, we know approximately what Wardsboro pays for transportation and how many students. There's a chart in one of these documents. Do you, Rich or Bill, have a round figure for what Dover pays on an annual basis, forgetting about reserves?
I mean, it's in the town report.
Yeah,
I'd have to
I
look
don't-
at that.
okay.
We do have a little chunk transportation.
It's
Right, I don't remember
It's
it.
a lot less, I would assume, because they don't own their bus.
We have an employee.
Yeah, because we-
Right, it's and benefits and lots of other
So
stuff.
we have a contract with West River, I think it's 12 to 15.
11.5.
11.5, so 12, that's not bad. We pay the mover 10?
4,000.
4? Okay, so 16. I think we figure about, out of the 80 hours of the 2 people that work in the building,
22%.
about 22%, so a quarter of the janitorial salaries
Oh, you got it.
is,
Yeah.
She has it.
so it's a few $100,000, it's a couple $100,000.
Okay, that a right round figure was all I was really looking
I
for.
think so.
Second question is, from the Dover side, you've talked a lot about having to get a waiver, an annual waiver from the state. Is there any anticipation that the district is gonna have difficulty getting that?
No, because we haven't been able to find anybody who will
Yeah.
replace
There's
our
there's
service.
nobody else that can provide this
Okay.
service for less of a cost.
And the state has denied, and one of the examples I use is Pownell, because they're paying the guy $100,000 a year to drive school bus. Peter was trying to get the job, and he said he'd do it for half. But, that's a they were being a little outlandish, plus the bus contractor over there was saying, we'll do it. And
But nobody's coming running to
Right.
our 2 towns and saying,
Right, and there's only one provider. We even talked to the mover about assisting us back when Bill was our administrator. Would they be able to run it? And the mover, because of their government grant,
Have to have
can't
public
supplant something, that if there's a private contractor who can do it, they can't take it over, or they can't do it because it's not fair that they're getting grant money.
And the
So-
supervisory union has put this out to bid before too. It's not like we just go to West River, you know what I mean? They put it out to bid and
Oh, wait,
they
you have
come
to.
in by far
Every
lower than
3
anybody else.
Every 3 years, you have to put it out to bid. So I apologize. I didn't mean to confuse everybody.
No, I don't.
This transportation thing could be done like that.
Okay.
It's the implementation
Yeah, that's
that I
not
just
right.
think we need to kind of think about right
Right.
now, because
So-
that's what people care about.
I would really like to I would like to throw out that I think we could adopt this policy. Instead of saying the superintendent, we can put a committee, a transportation subcommittee appointed by the board, and we can make that a permanent committee like it is in Dover. It's not like they just meet to have a meeting, but if a parent makes a request for a change in the bus route or a new pickup spot, the transportation committee meets, and then it does include the road foreman, so that if the road foreman says there's no way a bus should ever stop on that hill, then it gives us a reason to deny it. And again, we'll give it the ability that the board makes a decision, but it's based on the recommendation of the subcommittee. And so I would like us to think about that.
I could mock up. If you guys are in concert,
Yeah,
I could
Yeah.
mock this up to give you guys another thing to discuss when I'm not here.
that sounds great.
Well, yeah, and then if we were to do that, then I think we could appoint a subcommittee even though the policy hasn't been adopted. So if we're
That's
comfortable that we're gonna move in that direction, at the next meeting, we can say, we want the subcommittee made up of this many people. Remember, we don't wanna have too many people on it. but we also wanna make sure everybody's represented that should be there. And then, you know, they can start looking at some of this stuff and the costs and talking, you know, hopefully Tammy and Mark, Tammy and Matt will be involved, and Mark maybe wants to be involved, and kind of put that together for us.
I can do that.
You guys want, is everybody okay with that on the board? Everybody out there okay with that? Does Wardsboro have any kind of subcommittee?
No,
No.
no.
Do you have a full-time road commissioner? Road
Yes.
foreman?
Mhm.
Okay.
See, in this town, they only use one road
Right.
that's a town road. Everything else is state road. So it's more important that Route 100 be clear
Okay.
than anything else, you know what I mean? It's really Route 100 and the South Wardsboro Road only for a short stretch.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just,
That's a
my
different
little,
board.
my little sidebar, I totally want my kids picked up at my house.
Meaning that you just.
Where do
have-
you live?
You get on the
On
committee,
Sheldon Hill.
committees in your future.
Wow. I drive up Sheldon Hill quite often now. I do not enjoy that.
It's the big line of cars.
Meaning
Big
for
line of
Wardsboro.
cars, it's danger, Ranger, I hate it.
Be like that
There's a
Wyndham
lot
Hill.
of families up there.
Is there now?
Wyndham Hill.
Even if they just do my loop, that's all I need.
Wasn't Sheldon Hill for a long time was a private road? Wasn't that Sir Sosimo's responsibility?
time,
A
yes.
long time ago.
Yeah.
Because we're Sassuonos.
So what's your bus route look like for Wardsboro? Is it
The
just
bus
a
route
couple?
literally goes up to
Just
100
100 and back.
And then there's a couple stops on the South Wardsboro Road that right now they pick up some new Newvane kids along the way, but that's really it.
It's very
So it's very
Streamlined.
basic.
streamlined.
Yeah,
Streamlined.
it's got like 7
Beautiful.
stops.
For $74,000?
As I say, we're paying quite a bit for one line.
I'm saying.
A lot of money.
And they'll pick up more kids up on Sheldon Hill than they will in South Wardsboro, just saying.
Yeah.
Did you
Look at
do
me.
it?
Well, that's, so you have to have that
And the
argument
bus
with
driver used to live up
Wardsboro
there,
board
been
now.
told, so that bus has done that road.
He drives
She's
by
had
in
that
the
argument.
But
Transportation
On the first
services,
time.
vehicle maintenance
Well,
service.
that's for elementary, and then look at the
Right.
secondary.
Secondary is 15.
So it looks like we spend about $60,000, Mark.
Okay.
And it's secondary and elementary.
ours is too.
Yeah.
That's this year, because you guys have a new bus to
That's
Brattleboro
for-
this year, right? That
Oh,
was
no,
before-
that's
before
not
the
in there, because that was a
mover.
special article. So we're probably 60 and another 25, so we're at 85, 80, 86, somewhere in that area,
Right.
But
roughly.
you also have capital property.
Capital.
Right beyond.
You've got the buses.
Right, but we really haven't funded that with tax money in years.
Okay.
Because the other thing is, because when we first started that, the buses were getting pretty heavy mileage. Since we got the Obama money for the vehicle stuff, we got 2 buses for the cost of 1 roughly. Plus, we were able to give West River a really good bus. And then and so we kind of, it messed our capital all up where we didn't have to do anything for a while, so.
No, but you own the capital. That's-
Right.
That's a line item on your balance sheet.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so I think we killed transportation, Bill.
So we haven't really decided about that. Do we want to?
Yeah, he's gonna mock up one with us.
Policy.
I'll
And
give you the
instead of
mock-up
saying
policy.
superintendent here, it's gonna
But
say.
the hard work
Well, I
is
know,
gonna be after.
we haven't decided about that,
No,
having a subcommittee or not.
no, but that'll be, he'll
It'll
do
be
that in this new
Which
policy.
will be similar to the
And
one
if we're
we're
happy
looking
with that next meeting, even if we don't adopt the policy, we can still appoint a subcommittee based on the, and
We have
get
some
that,
big decisions.
and get them
Yeah,
going.
so I understand.
But I think that's a good idea to have the subcommittee hammer that out, and that leaves us really with the food discussion, the 21C and the technology, so it makes the board budgeting stuff a little easier.
Yes.
So that's a good point. So I think we're good on transportation. I had no other old business. Did anybody else have anything old? Yes?
Just a suggestion, shut up.
You want us to
sorry.
shut up? That's
No,
fine.
no, I was telling my tablet that, just so the camera knows. Based on what Tennille said and Dwight, it might be worthwhile having the board having a vote on what you want to call the schools.
Yeah, I got that under,
Just-
it said on the next agenda. That's,
Oh, you do have it on there, okay. I didn't hear that.
no, I, discussion of campus terms, I called it. And I told Bill and Rick to remind me, because I usually send
Got it
the
on the list.
agenda by them first. So thank you.
That's good.
All set? Okay, any other new business? We have no update on contractual. So our next meeting is October 20th at Dover. And then November 5th
Is
No.
that the right?
No what?
No.
I think that's the wrong date, isn't it?
Oh, it's the first, so it's
Today's the
gotta be the
first.
16th,
15th.
15th. Why do I have the 25th?
You might know that, I can ask. Today's the first, I can figure it out.
You're awesome, you want to
Yeah,
take
right.
a quick
Okay.
minute, you know?
No. And then November 5th, is that the right date?
I think it is. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, the 19th, nailed it. Yeah, 5th is right.
Okay, and then I had a question mark, not for the Wardsboro, but then I had question mark November 19th, which is 14 plus 5, so I got that one right.
Yes.
In Dover, but that's that Monday of Thanksgiving week, and I think there's no school at all Thanksgiving week.
Yes.
So the other problem though is if we there's a meeting, we have an extra Monday in October, but Tammy's got a school event then, so we don't want to do it that night. So do we want to do another night, or do you want to meet on the 19th? Because we still have a lot of stuff to do. I don't think we can get away with one meeting in November. We're also going to start having Wyndham Central meetings because we have to do a Wyndham Central budget, which is very important to get our budget done. So,
Could you
I
do
will
it
be in
2
South
weeks?
America on the 19th.
5th and 12th?
well, I got to Bill, the Wardsboro, West Rivers meeting, so we
You
couldn't
guys
have
make the
Bill.
deal to do they're doing the 12th and the 26th.
Right, so we can't meet either one of those nights because I talked to the West River chair
That was your deal.
and I told him, yeah, we had those dates first, so they're ours. I would like to meet on the 19th. I know there's no school, but not everybody on the board has school kids.
I will not be there.
The 19th of,
I'll be in Chile.
Chile?
wow. So you're
Where
gonna
you
be
gonna
dialing
be?
in?
Virginia.
Oh, it's only an hour different.
So
The 19th of November? You talking
Yeah.
about? What are we talking about? Sorry.
That's what we're talking about.
19th. Well, there's no school that week.
Right, that's what I said.
That's right,
I can
South
be there.
Carolina.
He said regardless of the
Can you
fact
be
that
there?
there's no school. Right now, I'm wide open on the 19th.
Thank you.
Wide open.
Right now.
We're gonna hold the 19th
Wide
still.
open.
We still have time to discuss it at the next meeting.
You'll discuss it
We'll
the
have
next
Laura
week. Okay.
and Barry there, and if they.
I've got you on the
can't make it,
19th,
then we won't
and
have
then
it.
you just cancel.
No, what's it?
The natural.
Yeah.
26th
Thank
no
you.
good, you said, right? So that's-
No, because that's when West River's meeting.
So we'll be here the 15th.
What do you call that, a soft meeting
And
date?
the 5th.
Right,
I've
and
got
then
every 2 weeks you're on.
we're questioning the
Cancel.
So
19th.
the 15th, those in Dover?
Yes. Yeah, we're back to, I think we got all caught up. I think we were very fair. I think we made the right numbers, unless somebody tells me different.
You had,
But I-
you had one extra here, but.
Did we? Oh my gosh.
You had 3 in a row here.
I don't know.
Yeah, but we
Pretty
did
sure I'm here
3 in a row in Dover.
No, we go back on.
Oh, we,
schedule.
no, but remember in June, we only did one, and we
Only
did that
one.
in Dover.
Pretty sure I'm here.
Go back on.
So I think we're right,
I
but
thought we're back, we're
we
back.
can, doesn't
Even if you're
matter.
off by 1, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, and I think we had it, we also want to do that one so we could do IB here.
15th Dover,
Yes.
5th Wardsboro.
And that's it for now. And we're tentatively the 19th in Dover. Bill, you're around?
I am. I leave the
19th.
next morning, but I'll be here.
Okay, perfect.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Just
You
looking
like me
ahead
here.
in December, I know that's.
I
early.
appreciate that.
Hang
I
on,
get good
guys.
vibes
Hey,
from Dwight.
yoo-hoo.
I'm like having
One
a-
last thing, we'll get out of here.
I know it's early, but thinking ahead in December, then you'd be December 3rd and the 17th?
Yes.
Okay.
That works good.
Yes,
It's on
that
the
works
back
well.
of this
So
one.
what
I
are
saw
the-
this one. The
That
next
works
one's
well.
missing.
What are the
Right,
final
that's
dates?
what I wanted to check in.
19th's only one that's a problem.
Final dates?
Yeah, there you do.
October 15th, November
5th.
5th, and tentatively the 19th.
Right, Bill, will you be able to get us another minute taker?
When are you not gonna be here, Pete?
19th.
Between the 17th and the 25th of November.
November 19th is the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I can work on it.
And we'll have a Dover meeting the 19th too, because we meet the 3rd, so we'll need one for Dover also.
All right.
You all good?
Yeah, sure.
And so you're gonna work with Lori too on the capital budget.
Yep.
Rick,
Thanks,
you all
Lloyd.
set?
Do you want
Yeah.
to?
Absolutely.
Carrie, anything
Appreciate it.
else?
No.
Not much to do.
Okay, unless somebody really wants to stay and visit, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Carrie moved to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. We're out of here. So are we taking these home with us?
You're in
or-
Stover.
Do we have to bring these back every?